Welcome back to the Bourbon and BS podcast, everyone. This is episode 223. It is 601 day. That's June 1st. So Eric Espinosa, who's been on the podcast before, makes 601 cigars. And we'll get into that a little bit. We were smoking a 601 blue, but it is June 1st, 6-1. So 601. So happy 601 day. We have Amy Gehring.
Hello.
In the garage. Buckeye Bourbon Girl is the title?
That's my handle. Yeah,
Handle.
Buckeye Bourbon Girl in the house.
Handle. Amy, thank you for joining us. Your first podcast ever.
Yeah.
So you'll get this one out of the way,
Yeah.
and then you'll be able to go do real ones. That'll be good.
Oh, ouch. Ouch.
I'm just saying.
A little self-deprecating humor there.
That's right. That's right. Nate Hale. That's Nate Hale on the mic.
Oh, thanks.
And I am Steve Crane. Guys, thanks for tuning in. We have a bottle tonight. We talked about it a few weeks ago when Ryan Newman was on the show, and it is from Kentucky Owl. This is the Wiseman, and this is the Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey. That's what we're going to be going over tonight. We've got it in our glasses. Nate, thank you very much for bringing that bottle.
Oh, you're welcome.
Like I said, we're smoking the 601 Blue Maduro. And I want to thank our sponsors, you guys especially, patreon.com/Bourbon and BS podcast. You guys are amazing. We have the continued support from you guys. It helps pay the bills, like our streaming service, getting this podcast out to you guys. Everything really just, it absolutely is a big help. So we appreciate that. And also, if you guys want to buy us a bottle, go to Venmo and at Bourbon and BS. That's the way you can do that. Throw us a one-time contribution, and then you can obviously let us know what you want us to try to buy, and we'll try to do it. Ohio's a little tough, but we'll do our best. And I'll be traveling at the end of this month into Chicago. So hopefully if there's something, if you guys get us a request before then, I can actually pick it up outside of Ohio. And also, guys, Tinderbox at Easton, they are the sponsors that give us the feature cigar every week. Columbus, Ohio. Check them out for the Espinosa line. We had Tyler Jones, the rep, on recently. But we're smoking the 601 Blue Maduro for the first time, I think, in over 200 episodes. So this is one of my favorites from them. So I'm interested to see what you guys have to say about it. And if anyone out there is smoking it as well, or have had it, let us know about that as well. And then Altadis USA, Josh Bentley, we have the Monte Cristo White Series Toro for the second featured cigar tonight. And that's going to be for the second part 2, Beyond the BS. They give us that every week. We appreciate that support, as well as the sponsorship for the third year going right now. So, and also BS Cigar Company. I've got a gold over here made by Placencia, and the silver's made by Espinosa as well. I should have brought that into the garage. So, Nate, if you want to help Amy with that there.
Yeah.
So Amy's a cigar smoker, but not an avid cigar smoker. We'll get into where she is at in the bourbon world as we get started here. And last but not least, I've got the podcast shirt on. Nate's got a Light It Up t-shirt. That's going to be at buyjack.com/Bourbon and BS. You guys can get all the swag there, and we appreciate that support as well. That's it for announcements, I think.
Yeah, this shirt was fitting for today. So
his shirt says, "When the world hands you some BS," with the BS logo, light it up. So if you have, that's what we called our 2020 shirt. It can be fitting for any rough day.
Yeah.
Or just any day you wake up and say, fuck it.
Yeah.
Nate, how was
most days?
Oh,
no, I'm kidding. Not most days.
Yeah. So tonight we're going to go, I don't want to say lighter, but I mean, last week we had
Dallas
on and AJ, and so it was some positive messages, but if you guys have not listened to that, please go back and listen to that. The second part of that, we had Dallas Allen on, who was basically the first employed by a coroner's office suicide investigator. So it's a postvention as opposed to prevention, hoping to push it towards lessons learned and data so that there's more prevention on that. So that was fantastic part 2 with those guys.
Yeah.
But tonight we're going to be talking about, are you a good steward? Is that how we worded that?
Yes, I think so.
Check it out here.
It's what you told me.
So are there certain flavors I'm supposed to be looking for in this? Because
whatever you taste.
Because to me, cigars pretty much all just taste like tobacco. So.
Well, they are. Burning tobacco.
Why? Is there something specific that you are tasting? Or were you just asking out of curiosity?
Out of curiosity. Like, is there something I should be looking for?
Don't inhale, first of all.
Oh.
Did you?
It's been a while.
Don't inhale. You're gonna. It'll be a short show. Very possibly a short show.
I'll move the trash can.
Yeah, so it is. We can talk about that here since it is 601 day. You do get different flavors on the palate. It'll be interesting if you get through this one and smoke the Monte Cristo White Series because it's quite different.
Very.
You're more on the bourbon side of things, so I would say kind of related to a mash bill.
Mm-hmm.
So the ingredients here, if you look at a cigar, and this will be a good refresher for anyone that is more of a bourbon person, but you have what you see on the outside is a wrapper leaf, right?
Yeah.
And this one's going to be a Connecticut broadleaf. It's grown in Connecticut. It's a broadleaf wrapper.
So it's like a label.
What's that?
It's like a label.
No, I'm sorry. The label.
He's talking about this.
Yeah,
He's
let
talking
me-
about the actual.
Oh, the actual
The label
leaf.
is pure marketing, right? That's just a classic thing.
Oh,
So
okay, gotcha.
that's the thing about this. So it's
Gotcha.
tobacco through and through. So it's not necessarily like a mash bill where it's like corn, rye, malted barley, wheat, or any of that stuff. It's all tobacco, but so you've got a Connecticut broadleaf on the outside, what you see there,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
That's the Connecticut broadleaf. It's a hardy leaf. It's something that they'll typically be used on most of the time, medium to full-bodied blends. Sometimes you'll get a mild to medium like an Onyx, which for those out there, that's going to be an Altus product. So that's going to be a milder one. But then underneath that is a binder leaf.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they'll use a double binder. And so I'm working from the outside in on the cigar. And you can't really see it a whole lot, and once you're burning it.
Yeah.
But that's going to be a combustible leaf typically. It is part of the recipe, if you will, where it's going to be something that you will taste, but it's more of structural a lot of times. But it will, if you change that binder leaf for another tobacco seed or another region or different, it would change the flavor. Again, it's a recipe. So every little bit does go into that. And then what you see on the inside of that is going to be what they consider the filler. All tobacco, all long leaf. So this tobacco is running the whole length of the cigar,
Okay.
which is why these cigars will burn slower. They're going to have less flaky ash typically, as opposed to a less expensive cigar that's going to have short filler, like almost like a cigarette where it's going to be like broken up tobacco.
Mm-hmm.
So this is going to be something where that is really the combo for strength, flavor, and everything else. It's all coming. Again, you pull one leaf out of the whatever, 6 leaves in there, you will change the flavor, strength, and everything else. So that is where you're going to be getting different flavors, is the different types of seeds, like Connecticut broadleaf. There's other ones, Corojo, Criollo, Habano, like all these. And also where they're grown, where they come off of the plant. So the higher the leaves, it's going to be stronger leaves. As you go all the way down the bottom, they may be less flavorful, but they are very typically combustible.
Mm-hmm.
Right in the middle is kind of a sweet spot for flavor and combustible.
Okay.
So yeah, that's kind of where you're at. So yes, overall, just like people that don't drink whiskey all the time, they might say the same thing. First thing they say, like I smoke cigars, but I don't drink whiskey. This tastes like whiskey. I mean, I think it's a fair point, because you say, yeah, it tastes like tobacco. Well, it is. And for a lot of people with whiskey, it's like, oh, this tastes like whiskey. Like when you first started, you might be like, well, yeah, that burns.
Yeah.
So you're
or if you're like my wife, where you're like, I just taste alcohol.
Yeah.
Well, fun fact: when you have COVID, that is what it tastes like. When,
Just straight ethanol.
When I had COVID, last week, I tried drinking whiskey, and I was like, oh, it just tastes like alcohol.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until a couple days ago when it actually started tasting like bourbon again. I could start picking out the notes and the flavors again. So.
Yeah, when you do when your career or job or hobbies revolve around your taste buds, and all of a sudden those go away for a little bit, yeah, that kind of sucks.
Oh yeah.
Whether it be cigars, whiskey, it's like, shit, I can't taste anything.
No. It's a little hot, by the way. I'm sweating. You guys are lucky to have hair, because when you don't. No, I'm good. I'm just gonna sweat it out. You know what I mean? It's cutting season, right? A little bit of sweat and whiskey.
So you said this is a Connecticut broadleaf.
Correct.
The rest of it Nicaraguan?
Nicaraguan filler binder, yeah.
Is this coming out of his Lazona factory?
It is.
Okay.
It's interesting while we're talking about the cigar. We talked about it before when Eric's been on. Eric Espinosa is the manufacturer of this, Amy. The 601 lineup was actually originally with Eric Espinosa and a gentleman by the name of Eddie Ortega, called EO brand. So this is one of those blends that was part of that portfolio. Now, that being said, it is something that also, when they parted ways, they lost the recipe, if you will. The manufacturer of who was making the 601s did not necessarily disclose that to them, and therefore it was something that.
So it was being made someplace else for Eric and Eddie.
Correct. Yeah,
So
they did not have a factory. They didn't do that. So when they did that, it was really interesting to me because talking to Eric, it's him and Hector. He and Hector, who has also been on. He's the kind of the master blender operations guy, everything else. They literally had to
reverse engineer.
Yeah, they had to snatch up as many of the blends as they could around their area and basically cut them apart and start reverse, like to your point, engineering. They basically were trying to figure out, obviously Eric knew the gist of it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I know, like, he may have known Connecticut broadleaf, Nicaraguan filler binder. He knew maybe some regions, but he didn't know necessarily which was Ligero, which was Seco, which was, and so that's really what they did for a while. Tyler says AJ's factory used to be at Lazona, but I know he's been switching things around.
Yeah, because
maybe it's at AJ's factory now.
Yeah, because I think if it's made, I think
You're
it's
right.
Made,
601's all AJ.
So, but at one point
now,
at one point it was Lazona because one of our regulars at the Tinderbox, who is a huge fan of Espinosa cigars, gave me an old school 601 Blue Lancero that was made prior to them switching factories.
Mm-hmm.
So I've still got that sitting in my humidor. Yeah, Tyler said it was at Lazona before they went with AJ. So yeah, I have a 601 Blue Lancero that was made at Lazona by in Eric's factory before it switched over to AJ. Yeah, so he also has the blue. There's the 601 Blue. There's the green.
Yep.
Which is Oscuro. Red's Habano. There's the yellow, which is the La Bamba. I'm not sure what the wrapper is on that one. There's a black, and then he does that Warhead series each year.
Right.
Which I think currently the Warhead 7 is kind of similar to the 601 Blue.
I think and Tyler, if he's out there still, I think it's the same blend every time. It's just different Vitolas.
Oh, okay.
I believe Vitola is the shape and size. Just trying to educate Amy as well as all you guys. she's nodding.
She's waiting.
I know nothing. I'm just absorbing.
She's going
and
to school
learning.
us on bourbon here in a moment. So that's cool.
Yeah, we're getting ours in now, Steve.
Trying to sound smart. We're not doing well
because that's going to change here in a minute.
Yeah. No. But what do you think? Besides that, it tastes like tobacco, Amy. This is a bit fuller bodied. So for someone that doesn't smoke many cigars, it is a bit of a. I don't want to say powerhouse, but it's a bit of a punch. You know what I mean? It's bolder.
It's punchy. Yeah, I've noticed that. I've smoked other cigars in the past, and most of them have been like bourbon infused ones. I've had the Maker's Mark ones and the Blanton's ones, and that's pretty much as far as my cigar experience has gone. So like this is, I'm finding it to be like a lot bolder and a lot punchier and like a lot more smoky and flavorful than like what I've had in the past. So
is that a good thing for you, or is it just
for me? I'm a flavor person, so yeah, for me that's a good thing. So
got it.
Yeah. This is. I mean, so for someone who's outside the cigar world, there's a lot of times we'll get customers that they're just getting into it, and we tell them like they're like they come in, they're like, I'm looking for a recommendation. It's like, well, do you want like a regular cigar, like something like this, where all the flavor is coming from just the tobacco, or are you wanting something that's flavored or infused, like the Makers, or Gurkha has one that's bourbon, rum, cognac. There's a lot of different flavored cigars out there.
Oh, sure.
So with something like this, and most of the cigars that are available at the Tinderbox Easton, all the flavor that you're getting is, like Steve referred to, that recipe. It is that blend of different tobaccos, all natural, that are coming together to create a product that has different flavors.
I had a point here from Anthony. He says the blue box, talking about not this. I was confused for a second. The Warhead. Put this up here. The Warhead you were just talking about. He says this is the first time that they're using Nicaraguan-grown Connecticut broadleaf versus Connecticut broadleaf, and it's phenomenal. So they might have changed it a bit going forward. But to my knowledge, again, and if you're out there, Tyler, Eric, tag Eric if you want to, or Hector, let us know. As far as I know, this is a Connecticut broadleaf wrapper leaf.
Well, I think that's what Anthony was referring to. So the regular 601, the 601 blue that we're smoking, Connecticut broadleaf. The Warhead 7 is a Nicaraguan grown Connecticut broadleaf, which explains why when I've smoked that cigar comes across a little bolder even than this one, and has just a little bit more spice to it than this one as well. Yeah. And what's the Vitola that we're smoking right now?
So this is what they call a short Churchill, which is an odd way of describing the cigar. I think it's just shy of a normal 7-inch Churchill. I think this is a 6 and some, and then it's going to be 50 ring gauge. But they call it a short Churchill. That is a term that's fairly unique to Espinosa cigars. Yeah. This is our #1 seller at the Tinderbox at Easton. This size in particular, I think it's full of flavor. That the slimmer ring gauge really helps out, which is nice. Smoke the Toro, the Robusto.
This is my favorite size of this blend.
Yeah. So what do you think, Nate? Tell everyone what you think of this.
So I love this cigar. This is probably my favorite Espinosa cigar. I like the boldness, but it's bold in terms of flavor more than strength, because it is a fuller bodied cigar, but it's so rich in flavor that sometimes you don't necessarily realize that it is a full bodied cigar. Like I get a lot of that dry dark chocolate, like a dark roast coffee notes as well to it. A little bit of spice to it with the Nicaraguan tobacco, especially in the retrohale. But I mean, for as bold as this cigar is, it's very smooth on the palate, but just a ton of flavor. So I know the Tinderbox carries several 601 products. And so I'd recommended last week that we do a 601 because it happened to fall on June 1st today. So I wasn't sure and I saw you were smoking the green earlier today. So I thought you may have been picking the green. But when you said the blue, I was like, you know what? Smoking the blue, I love it. Like, we got to have a richer, kind of heavier whiskey, I thought maybe. And I just happened to pick up this bottle on my way here. And it's like, we'll see which one we go with. But for me, this is one of my favorite cigars for after my steak and wine Sunday. So after a heavier meal, sitting out on my patio with either, a barrel proof or still drinking red wine, this is one of those cigars that I keep on hand to smoke after that. And I've got 5 of the short Churchills at home in my humidor. This is absolutely one of my favorites. It's my favorite Espinosa, but it's one of my favorite cigars. This is a top 5 cigar for me.
Nice. Amy, you're still enjoying this?
I am. This is actually really nice.
That's good. I'm glad you like it.
Yeah.
It's I think it'll be relevant. I think, the thought process of, to your point, you've had some cigars, but not really a wide arrangement. Don't inhale.
I wasn't inhaling.
Okay. Just want to make sure. Jesse Hubbard, who's been on the show recently, actually says, "What's up, guys?" You know Jesse Hubbard.
Yes, I know Jesse. Hi, Jesse.
Yeah. He was on a few weeks ago.
Yeah. But I'm glad you like this because, again, there's so many different cigars out there that someone that will smoke one cigar and then they won't. I tell you, you're inhaling. I can tell it. But I do. I like this cigar. This is one of my top ones from Eric. I've always liked this 601 Blue. I do like the 601 Green Oscuro as well, but I love the broadleaf on this, and just it's a very rich. You get a bit of I think more of a coffee type of almost like espresso and cocoa type of those types of notes from it for sure. Yeah, I like this a lot. So, do you have any other questions on the cigar, Amy?
No, actually, I think you guys got very like in depth into it. We all know I'm a cigar novice, so I don't really know anything about cigars. So I honestly just learned a whole lot from just like listening to you guys talk about it.
Good.
Like, totally kind of opened my mind to this whole cigar world and seeing what there's a whole lot out there, just like there is with whiskey. So might be something fun for me to explore.
Absolutely, especially with your passion on the whiskeys and the bourbon.
Oh gosh, yes.
It is it'll suck you in. It'll suck you in if you like different flavors. Now, do you smoke cigarettes? Do you smoke anything else?
No, I am not a smoker.
Okay.
Normally, like I just smoke cigars once in a while.
All right. Yeah, I'm not trying to scold you on that, but I just don't. We have had some newer cigar smokers on the podcast before, and it is something that when people are smoking cigars for the first time, if you guys are more whiskey people out there, because you have Amy on here, and you're learning about the cigars, the biggest thing that we always tell people is don't inhale, because it's not necessarily a natural thing when you think of smoking. I like Nate's typical comment to people in the shop and other people that you don't have taste buds in your lungs, so that's not really the point of it. Cigars typically are going to be, like I said, the premium cigars. There's no filter. That's just 100% tobacco. It's a very thick smoke. You can see it, but it's something that is going to overwhelm most people's lung capacity, especially a stronger cigar. And so it's something that, when I describe it, it's more like sucking on a straw, where when it's very similar motion, right? Or motor skills that you pull it into your mouth when you're drinking, say, a soda out of a straw or water or whatever. And the second thing for drinking something is swallowing it. You just don't do that part of it. You pull it in the mouth, right? Just as if you were going to swish around, and you don't have to swish around actively like Listerine or something, but then you spit it back out in a sense. You know what I mean? It's kind of more of that.
That's what I've been doing. It's like I pull it in and then I push it back out.
Yeah. And as you do it more, it's not going to necessarily be like you're like blowing it with force. You can, but it's more just like a gradual, like kind of puff in, like you're sucking on a straw, and then just a gradual enjoy that flavor and just let it kind of like blow out or exhale a little bit. But it's keeping it away from your lungs. That's the big thing about it. And I have had people on the show, otherwise, like in the shop, you're trying to teach someone how to smoke a cigar. They're good. And then all of a sudden that's why I kind of heard you kind of cough a little bit. I'll look over like, you inhaled, didn't you? And they're like, yeah, I did. Like, it's okay. It's like a practice thing, but it becomes natural for sure if you get into it. What's going on, Charlie Creekmore out there?
Oh, and to Anthony's point, all the 601 blues, they're all box pressed, aren't they?
Yeah.
There is no round. He said there he'd love a Corona Gorda. Maybe that was
Anthony, round. Eric's had some blends and other companies as well, but I can think of like with Eric Espinosa, the 601 blue. I think I'm with you on that. The Murcielago until he got to the Rabito size, but he had that box press Toro in the Murcielago. And one time when he was up here, it was 4 years ago, Brian and I were talking to him. Brian had the idea. He's like, would you ever do like a round Murcielago? He's like, yeah, I could. And he's like, you want me to just do it for your shop? I'm like, yeah, that'd be great.
I have one in my lot.
Do you really?
I have one at home.
We did about 2 batches of those. They were fantastic. And then it was kind of like between everything else going on, trying to get another production on top of everything else they're doing, it just became too overwhelming. So we're just like, just drop the project.
And with the BS Silver.
We were focused more on the BS Silver.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's fun. All right. Let's get into the whiskey here a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about drinking it. We're already drinking it.
Can we skip to the good part?
Oh, hey.
So tonight we are drinking the Wiseman Straight Bourbon. We had a few weeks ago, like I mentioned, Ryan Newman was on, and he had the Kentucky Owl, the last rye. I always mess this up. It's the last rye 10-year. Is that
Kentucky Owl 10-year batch 4, the last rye, which we still have.
Show off.
We still have the tube up there.
Oh, nice. I have the batch 3. The batch 3 is excellent.
Is it?
Batch 4 was pretty darn good because Spencer was here and he was the lowest rating at 8.75. The rest of us were all 9 on that whiskey.
That's nice.
So
this one that we are drinking, it's from the company Kentucky Owl.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to review a bit about Kentucky Owl, or do you want to refer them to the episode with Ryan and get into what they're doing here?
I can cover a little bit
okay.
of catch up for people that may have not tuned in to that episode. So Kentucky Owl was one of those brands that started back in the late 1800s. And then when Prohibition hit, it kind of died because of Prohibition. And then it stayed dormant until 2014 when like the great-great-grandson was Alex Dedman.
Dixon
Dedman.
Yeah.
Oh, you know something about whiskey, dude.
When Dixon
Move over, Nate.
Dixon revived the brand, and then in 2017 it was bought by the Stoli Group, and then recently April of last year Dixon left the company, and now their head is a guy that used to work for Four Roses, who was inducted into the Bourbon Hall of Fame in 2016. I pull up his name unless you want to shout it.
You said Charles Dedman, right? That's
Charles was the founder.
There you go.
And then John Ray.
Yeah.
He's the one that RHEA.
Yeah, probably Ray.
He's the one.
Ray.
He's the one that kind of does the distilling now. Currently, they're still sourcing. They still have that partnership with Bardstown.
Mm-hmm.
So this is for right now, this is a sourced whiskey, but it's a blend of 4, 5.5, and 8.5 year bourbons. But they don't disclose. This one is. Okay. But they don't disclose. They don't disclose where those are being sourced from, whether they're all Bardstown stuff. But Bardstown hasn't been around for 8 years, right. So they haven't disclosed who all these are coming from.
I know Dixon has a relationship with the Carters, of old Carters, so I wouldn't be surprised if some of that comes from them.
Okay. But yeah, we talked about like the reason the Kentucky Owl 10-year batch 4 last rye. The reason that was called the last rye is that was the last of those sourced. Yeah, that was the last of those sourced, 10-year ryes that they had. And so they were going to focus, because that was one of the last high-end things that they were able to do, just because of what they've been able to procure sourcing whiskey, and, they're wanting to do their own stuff. Stoli was going to start coming out with some lower priced products that could keep their, try and build a little bit of market share. And so this is one of those products. So there's the Wiseman Bourbon that we're drinking. Mash bill's undisclosed. Because it is a blend. It is 90.8 proof. And I also have the rye, which Steve, you and I have tried before.
Right.
That's a 95.5 rye mash bill.
My favorite. I love that 95.5 MGP rye mash bill.
Yeah. And that one is coming in at 100.8, which when I brought it into the shop and we did a after hours pour, and you and Josh were doing the blind guessing, that was the one that you guessed 100, and it was 100.8.
Yeah,
so
probably pretty smooth. That's all I can imagine. All right, so Amy, let's kind of get your impression of this, and then I'd like just a brief. We'll get into it a little bit more about where you're at in the bourbon world currently, right? And how you got into it and all that stuff. But what are your thoughts on this? Anything else that Nate didn't share?
So this is my first time trying this. So I do own a couple of like Dixon's like blended batches. I have the batch 9 bourbon Kentucky Owl. I have the batch 3 rye. Both are excellent. I've never tried the Wiseman's before, so this is a new experience for me.
So my first experience with the Wiseman was the first time I bought the rye. It was at the Kroger right up the street. And at the time it was in the locked case next to the counter.
Yeah. And
so there's 6 other guys behind me, all with bottles of bourbon. And I walk up there with nothing in my hand. So I assume, everyone's probably thinking, oh, this guy's going to ask questions. He's going to be here forever. And I look at the guy, and it was, the guy who actually listens to the podcast.
Oh, yeah.
That works there.
Good dude.
Yeah.
Real good dude.
Yeah. And I was like, yeah, I want to get something out of the lock case. And he's like, oh, okay. And I was pointing to it. And as he comes around, I look at all the guys behind me, and every single one of them is just like, what the hell is this? What the hell is this guy buying in the case?
They don't know because they're the y'all got any Blanton's people.
Yeah.
Very possible.
There was literally a guy that walked in there ahead of me that day. He's like, y'all don't have any good bourbon? I'm like, the fuck are you talking about? Like,
fresh
and
out.
in Central Ohio, that usually means y'all got any Blantons?
Yeah.
Or anything from the Buffalo Trace.
Trace.
Yeah. They're, the hunters. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, and that rye was the first of the Wiseman products. It was actually the first Kentucky Owl product I'd ever had was that Wiseman rye.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. And I liked it enough to buy another bottle and save it for a podcast.
Nice.
And then on my way here, before I left, I actually asked Amy, I was like, what do you like? And she goes, bourbon and rye. And I'm like, no shit.
Very
I was like,
it's like, I'll tell you what I hate, and then you can go from there.
Yeah, there you go.
Very
Don't say the brands. But yeah, on my way here, I decided to stop by Chateau's on Sawmill, and I was looking. I was like, I want to see what they might have. Maybe that'll go well with the 601 Blue. Something we haven't had. And the rye and bourbon were just sitting on the shelf, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to grab the bourbon. It's a blue label. We're smoking the 601 Blue. Let's go with that.
It's an aesthetic. It's a vibe.
Absolutely.
It is a vibe. I will say the packaging on the bottle is very nice.
Yeah.
Top notch. Even like on the neck there, the foil or whatever they're using there, the gold foil on that, the blue color, there's green on the rye. Just everything is just absolutely.
I love everything about the labeling. Yeah, it's
super
beautiful.
detailed. The artwork on the front, and it's a sticker.
It's a work of art, though.
Yeah, it is, and I'm sure that if we had someone on, and as you get to know probably Amy more, that you would be able to tell us. But I think in general, the people from Kentucky Owl, I'd imagine, would be able to tell us what the story is. I think I would guess, much like cigar bands, there's significance to everything on there.
Yeah,
everything.
I would think so.
You've got
the hourglass, the owl. It looks like a Bible.
You got a couple seals.
Yeah,
and it does say guided by wisdom and crafted with knowledge. So it is. And on the Wiseman, you've got on top of the M is like a graduation cap.
Yep.
So I don't know if it's school seals that they came up with, if it's something the heritage of the family. I don't know.
I mean, like, how like owls are kind of associated with like wiseness and like kind of deviated from Kentucky Owl and the wise owl. So I can kind of see how that kind of deviate from that kind of overall theme. But I wouldn't be surprised if some of the designs and the label kind of originated with the original brand, like from the pre-Prohibition brand.
For sure.
So
when someone says owls, I think of Tootsie Pops.
And
those commercials from back in the day.
Wise owl too in those commercials. You're absolutely right. I mean, you're not wrong there.
How many licks does it take to get to the bottom of this bottle?
and the owl's always the teacher, though. It's always the one teaching. So it's like,
that owl though on the
owls
Tootsie
are fucking smart, man.
He was kind of a smart ass, if I remember the commercial. He takes the Tootsie Pop, and
one,
the
two,
person came to him because he or she, I think it was a he with a voice, but I mean it was he. The owl was supposed to be the wise owl, and he's so wise that he basically was like, "I'll tell you how many licks it takes. I'm gonna show you at the same time." So maybe he was learning. He fucking took that Tootsie Pop.
Yeah, 1 lick, 2 lick, and then just
that's kind of a dick move, but I think we all learned something, which I like about that, honestly, which I think is really relevant. I have nothing. I'm just tailing off at this point. Anyways, what do you think of this, Amy?
First time trying it.
So on the nose, for me, it's very kind of like florally and nutty. It's like you get kind of like that bean nut kind of scent, but with like a little bit of like honey and like lavender kind of tied in.
It's I think it's kind of smooth on the nose. Like there's nothing like it doesn't necessarily.
I mean, define smooth. I mean,
it doesn't come across.
Smooth is vague. So what kind of notes do you get?
Well, I mean, it doesn't come across hot. It doesn't come across like it's
no,
hot.
it's not hot at all.
Yeah.
It's just sweet. It's a very just sweet and kind of sweet, nutty and floral. And I say for me, it's like honey, lavender, vanilla, a little bit of like a peanutty kind of flavor, like a peanut nougat. I like that.
Nougat. I would say nougat. I get mostly sweet. I know that's probably vague for you, Amy, but I'm getting an overwhelming sweetness.
For me, it's like I'm getting peanut. I'm
allergic to peanuts, so I'm out on that one.
I'm getting kind of a vanilla. I'm getting like a warm caramel, slight toasted coconut, like a lot of those kind of like warm, like a warm vanilla. If for the ladies who are listening, if they remember what warm vanilla sugar from Bath and Body Works tastes and smells like, that's what it tastes like.
I have a lot of Bath and Body Works stuff in my house.
So yeah.
Jonathan Herring says dried apricot ?
Well, it's funny because
I do get kind of like a honey, like a
little fruit,
like a cantaloupe kind of flavor.
Cantaloupe.
A little bit of like a melony, like it's like a summer fruit.
Yeah, I can see that. That's the sweetness I get.
Hey, when you've tasted and like written notes for as much whiskey as I have, you learn to pick out notes.
That's why. So we've talked about that when people hear someone like yourself, Amy, they read a review on a bourbon or whiskey or rye, or they read a cigar review, someone's pulling out like in this order in the first third, I get, and they list out 8 different things. The thing with that is I think some people do have the nose, they have the palate for that, right? They can really pull things apart. I'm curious, like with you studying all this, I'm of the opinion that there's a agreed upon notes. The more if you have 2 people that are, you studied what you have, I think if there are similarities in pulling the notes, it's not, to the lay person that just like they smell it like Nate, not a lay, like very developed palate as well, but not as classically trained as you. So it's like he's like it's smooth. I say sweet when people talk about that. When Jake was a part of the podcast, he was really looking at it. He had like those flavor wheels. He was studying it, and I feel like there may be some people that can literally be like, yeah, it's dried apricot, it's it's summer fruit, it's cantaloupe and all that stuff. They can dial down into it. I think there's some agreed upon, just like anything else that you smell or taste, you expect cantaloupe to taste that way because you know what it is. I think that when cigar is a big thing, leather is a big thing in the cigar world, right?
I got a lot of leather off that cigar. I'm not going to lie to you.
But I think that's an agreed upon thing because when someone says, what does leather taste like? It's tough to describe, in my opinion. It's like what you think that if you like, people will have chewed it. You got baseball gloves, you got furniture, you got that smell, and you like the whole experience of leather, like fresh leather, especially, you know what I mean? So no, it does, like the tobacco doesn't taste like leather, like you have it in your mouth. It just has that whole experience of leather, I feel like.
Sometimes when you're smoking or tasting something, it'll trigger like a smell memory as well. Like a lot of times when I'm drinking whiskey, that's what happens to me is there's a certain taste that'll trigger a smell memory.
Yeah.
And that's how I sometimes will pull certain flavors.
And that's the thing. Like when it comes to tasting whiskey, there are no wrong answers. Like everybody's palate is different. Everybody relates to the flavors that they taste in the whiskey in his or her own way. It's different.
I love that.
We all relate to flavors differently. So
I'll encourage you, if you've never been to, or if you have been to like a whiskey tasting or whatever, like whether it be an event that you do or like if you go to a distillery tour and stuff like that, like I've been in those rooms, sitting around. Like I was just most recently at Greenbrier, and it was like we had this group around this bar or whatever, and it's like, all right, guys, first one, let's take a sniff. All right, what are you guys getting? And I looked around. Because I don't have the most developed palate, but I can tell you what I know that, like, all right, if it's not what everyone else thinks, that's fine. But this is what I'm getting
after 200 episodes.
But I got to tell you, there are people in there. You look at them, it's like the teacher just is like, all right, who wants to answer this question? And everyone's just like looking down at their desk. They're just like,
don't make eye contact.
I have had experiences like that.
They do that whole like smell, and they look up, and they're like.
I'm thinking.
Smell again. They're like,
don't call on me.
They have that scrunched face. I mean, like these are like people that like, like, are you guys really into whiskey? This is my first tour. Like, you're like, okay, cool. So but then they act. They look up. They're looking around. They look at everyone else, and they're like. And then finally, no one says something sometimes, and then the tour guide or the person holding the event is like, okay, no wrong answers. What are you getting? And they're like, and they say it in a form of question. Oakiness.
Yeah.
Like you almost like
is that right?
Voice crack. And I just want to like reach out and be like, just say it, man. You're fine. Like none of us know you. Like it's fine.
Yeah.
Like I'm cool. I think everyone in here is doing the same thing you are.
Yeah.
And it's always fun as soon as that person running that tasting or the tour, you know, they're like, yeah, no, oakiness. What? Anyone else get it? Like oakiness? And I was like, yeah. I got it. Yeah, I got that answer. It's truly opinion.
Yeah, it's like
but it can be overwhelming.
Yeah, it's like in 2019, this is November 2019. I took a good friend of mine, Carla, to Kentucky for her birthday, like a girls' trip. I went to Old Forester. And we did the tasting. Great tour, great tasting. And we did the tasting and like I was very involved. I was like smelling everything, and I was very vocal about what I tasted and what I smelled, and like nobody else in our group was. Because
now it's a diet like between you and the tour guide.
It's between us, and then like after the whole thing, like in the gift shop, a group of people who were in our tour tasting, they came up to me. They straight up came up to me like, "Thank you so much. We learned so much from you."
And I think some tour guides, most of them at the big ones, are great, right? They are. And
we went to Old Forester a year ago.
Yeah, but I think that's part of it. Is you were obviously passionate about it, but at the same time, that tour guide sometimes will also latch onto that person, where I think it's like a teacher, same way, is like, if I was running the tour, I keep coming back to you as the person that obviously you are really into this. And I'm like, all right, this person
and you're also
knows,
vocal,
but you're not,
you're
not showing off. You're excited. You're not like, be like, oh yeah, it's this, and this. Yes. You're like, no, I get this. Like, and it's like, now you're in this.
Yes.
I would like at one point be like, all right, anyone else? No, I want to hear what you have to say. Anyone else in the group? Like, I need to get people out there. But again, everyone goes on these tours and tastings. Some people are different learners. They do just want to sit back and hear what other people have to say.
Sometimes on a tour, like you might have someone like Amy who's getting all these different tasting notes. And then when they do the next whiskey, they're like, I didn't taste any of that, so I'm going to wait and hear what she says, because she's kind of intimidating.
It's happened at tastings I've done here. Like, I'm in Central Ohio Whiskey Society, and I go to as many of the meetings I can get tickets to. And like, whenever like there's people who sit around my table, they're like, "Oh, let's wait for Amy to say what she says," and all that. But the thing is, like, I really want people to like learn to discover for themselves what they taste and what they know. So whenever I leave, like when I've led private tastings in my home for friends, like I have a lineup. I make it a point to leave out my tasting notes, because I straight up tell them, I want you to discover for yourself what you.
So sometimes we do that here as well, where we don't, like, if the bottle says it or a review says it, like if Nate's looked it up already, he'll go last or whatever, because you want a little bit more. Once you read it, once someone says it, it's not always
there's
a bad
suggestion.
Well, it's not always a bad thing, because like, I'm searching for it. And when I smell sweetness on the nose on this glass, and I'm using a Ross glass, so I don't think I have as pronounced scent as you guys have. The smell is a little more muted, and I'm not going to nose your glass, but I think it is sometimes when you're doing it, it's good to then have that conversation, because you're like, I get that, and I can either say, no, that's not what I'm getting, or I can say, yeah, actually, let me try. I get it too, and it's not because you're trying to get along, or think that the tour guide or the person running the tasting or your friends think that you're like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, I know, I got it. It's like, there's not the right answer. But I think that sometimes talking about it will kind of dial into what it is, because you may smell something, you might taste something, and then all of a sudden that is what I'm tasting. I couldn't place it. I just couldn't. So what do we think about the flavor of this?
I like this. This is like dangerously drinkable.
It's like I said, it's only 90.8 proof, so it's something that's very approachable.
Very approachable, yeah.
Getting more water,
and it definitely has this thicker texture up front, like it really coats the palate. It's very oily for being only 90 proof. But
it just stays on your tongue.
Yeah, when it hits, it just kind of sits there for a little bit.
It's not like a Kentucky hug. It's not a Kentucky hug. It doesn't like hit you here, but it just like you still feel it up here. So
you pass me that bottle again.
So I am with you guys mostly on this. It's I don't know if it's the cigar. I kind of got it. We did have a little sip of a gift that you had brought before. Moving over to this. It's kind of like a it's not a sharpness. There's something like around here on the after.
A bit of spiciness.
It's a spice, but it's not like the typical like minty. It's not that kind of a spice where we talk about like it's like a minty cinnamon or whatever. It's something there that's almost.
I feel like it's like a clove.
Clove, that might be it, because if it's clove, like it's
anise.
Anise, yeah.
It's not off-putting.
Is anise a clove? Yeah.
It's not off-putting, but it's not my favorite. That part of it, that's the only part of it that's lingering.
I'm a licorice fan, so I like anise.
Yeah,
so.
No. I think that's you either love it or you don't.
Oh, I love it.
The black jelly beans. You like them or you don't.
Yeah.
You? Are you a black jelly bean person? No. You are, clearly. They sell full bags of black jelly beans. And I feel like that should be like a profiling thing. I don't think that's normal. My mom's one of them. I'm seriously my mom.
Although I will say that like there are maybe certain flavors that you should expect depending on what kind of mash bill you're drinking. Like if you're drinking a rye whiskey, then expect more like spicy flavors and more floral.
Yeah,
herby,
which I love them too.
Yeah. Herbal flavors, and maybe if you're drinking like a low proof wheater or a low proof corn bourbon, you'll get some of those more like standard, the caramel, vanilla, whatever.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Can you review what's in the bottle again? Do we have a mash bill?
There is no mash bill because
it is the ages.
It's a blend of 4, 5.5, and 8-year bourbons.
Don't know the percentages.
Don't know the percentages and
ranges.
While they are partnering with Bardstown, they also do not disclose what distillery or distilleries are being used in this blend.
Okay. Yeah. So
we can only speculate.
See Lou out there. Lou says, my family saves all the black jelly beans for me. I will say that same thing with my mom growing up, right? So that was the same thing. Like get the variety pack. So I don't think that necessarily. I think there's like a genetic thing, but there's always like one person in the family that really likes the black jelly beans. Likes that.
I am that person.
So there you go. This, I'm not going to say this has that. It has. I like the fact you guys both said that flavor profile, because I think that's one of the reasons why, like when I bite into, I'm sorry to harp on this, but when I bite into like a black jelly bean, at first I'm like, it's not so bad. And then you chew it up and you swallow it. And then like the aftertaste, I'm like, give me a red one. Give me like, anything else in the jelly beans. Like give me one more, because whatever this is not for me.
Do you want me to read the tasting review that I saw? See if anything pops in your head.
Sure.
Oh, did Breaking Bourbon do a review?
Yeah.
They are great.
Of course.
They are great.
Their reviews are pretty great.
So on the nose, and this might be a little bit of an overkill. On the nose, caramel, grass, roasted peanut,
got the peanut,
gentle rye spice, light curry, overall soft and airy. Definitely is soft on the nose.
There are similarities and differences in my nosing profile versus theirs.
On the palate,
like you said, there's no right or wrong answer.
Exactly.
Usually you're circling around the same amount.
Yeah.
On the palate, toffee, caramel, cereal grain, dry oak, and muted raspberry.
I like the adjectives that they use there.
Muted raspberry,
gentle.
Dry. That was on the nose. Yeah.
I would be curious as to how much they use synonym.com.
Synonym.com.
There you go. And then on the finish, rye spice, leather, which I did get some of that.
Yeah.
Lingering light dryness.
That's a sensation.
How big?
And then, here's my favorite one. For Jonathan Herring listening, drink on this one. On the finish, touch of ethanol.
It's not a weird fruit reference,
which is alcohol.
Maybe that's the that
little thing you were getting in the chin.
It's poison.
Yeah, ethanol. Yeah,
straight up ethanol. That's why it doesn't sit right on my palate at the end. I don't know. Charlie says, Liquid licorice, muted raspberry. What the fuck? You can get these types of flavors though.
Yeah, you can.
For me, my finish is. It's definitely like leathery. Yeah, and I get kind of that anise, that kind of like black licorice note.
I'm surprised that's not in their notes.
Yeah.
With a little bit of caramel.
Yeah, it still has a little bit of that prevailing sweetness.
And it just stays on your tongue forever.
So it does. So that's my point. I like about 90% of this drinking experience. I think it's dangerous on the other side of it when you were saying like this is like dangerously drinkable. I would agree. But if this is something, I think I'm maybe alone on this one, and I'm not trying to be negative on it, but I'm that lingering that you're absolutely right. It does not go away.
It just stays on your tongue forever. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm getting it like right at the beginning of like the back of my mouth, beginning of the throat. Like it's like just right there. So every time I swallow, it's like, it's remembering, nope, you're doing that. So then I go back to the glass. This is my vicious cycle. And I'm not going to speak on that, but I go back to it. I'm like, yeah, there it is. I like that part. And then I let it sit. And there it is again. Again, it's not that it's not pleasant. It's not that it's like a really, like, I don't like it. I'm just trying to say like that part of it is just not for me. You know what I mean? So like for me, this bottle, I enjoy it. This is a cool one to try, to share with friends.
But it's not a daily drinker.
It's not, it wouldn't be my daily drinker.
Yeah.
It like to some people, this would be like, oh yeah, this is a go-to for me because again, I'm not saying it tastes like black jelly beans, but it's kind of that same thing. People that like that finish, they'll be able to take a sip and then sit back in their chair and relax, or whatever. Like they're by a fire, they're watching something on TV, they're having a conversation. They can take a sip of this and they like that lingering part of it.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the reasons why there's so many different bourbons and whiskeys out there. Is
everybody's there's literally something for everybody when it comes to whiskey. There really is.
My wife, she's not a big whiskey fan because most of the whiskeys that she drinks, to her, like I said, she just tastes alcohol in most of them.
There is that.
Well, there was one night where I was at the shop and I had a couple bottles downstairs on my table that I'd been going back and forth with, and she decided to try a couple of them on her own, which kudos to my wife for being brave enough to try whiskey without me.
Brave enough.
But one was Sazerac Rye, which you and I both, we all love that one. And then the other one was that Watershed Black Label, the Eve's Blind blend.
Love that.
Yeah. So
running out of that.
So the Sazerac Rye is what, 95 proof, 95 proof, something like that. And that Watershed one is 130.4.
That's a barrel proofer, yeah.
And even though my wife's like, yeah, I don't like a lot of whiskeys because all I taste is alcohol, she liked that Eve's Blind blend more because the flavor and everything. Like it had so much flavor, it didn't taste like alcohol to her. So even though it was almost 40 proof points higher.
Well, we talked about that with when Anne, who had worked with Marianne on that pandemic, and she would we were talking about that a lot. Where I think the last episode Anne was on, it was about
Anne knows all.
She's been on the podcast quite a few times.
But I'm just like that was one of those,
the queen of Ohio bourbon,
and beyond almost. So getting to that point, but I will say that was what we talked about, is that proof doesn't always go into that. Going back to the cigar world, same thing. Someone says it's full bodied. To someone that's getting into it, they're going to think, oh, well, I don't want something harsh. And I don't want something that's going to be on my tongue when I wake up in the morning, where I try to tell them, well, some people do, but I'm on the other side of it is, to that point, a lighter, milder, like Dominican cigar. I enjoy most of it. If it's too grassy, not so much, but then it's like, I wake up after smoking that and I can't get rid of it.
It's just bitter.
It's kind of like that finish of this. Like I enjoy it.
Yeah.
But it's after I'm done with it, it's kind of like, how do I get this out of my?
Sometimes we get new cigar smokers in the shop, and all they've had are milder cigars.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, I don't really like the cigars that I've had. And I'm like, what have you smoked? And it turns out they've smoked almost nothing but mild cigars. Right. Those milder cigars, there's so many of them out there that because they're trying to keep it mild, the tobaccos that they're using, there's not going to be a whole lot of flavor. So by the end of it, all they taste is burnt tobacco, and it just leaves a bitter taste on their tongue, and they don't like that. And that's why a lot of times, like if we have a good sampler in the shop and someone's new or just getting into it, like we try and steer them towards a sampler because it's going to have mild, medium, fuller body cigars, but hopefully it's going to have something that actually hits their palate, because not everyone starting out is going to like that mild cigar because of that kind of burnt tobacco taste to it. Sometimes they'll like a medium or even a little bit stronger of a cigar because all the flavor is there. And that's what really turned me onto premium cigars. Was the very first premium cigar I had back when I was in college. The next morning I woke up, and even after brushing my teeth, I could still taste that cigar, but it tasted good.
Yeah.
It was a good flavor that was still sitting on my palate. And I'm like, yep, I'm going to keep doing this.
Yeah, there you go. All right, this is the time of part one, unless we have something else to really go over on the whiskey, but kind of want to get into a little bit more about you, Amy, in part two here. So it'll be a little bourbon heavy probably in the beginning. How are you enjoying that cigar?
I really do like this. This is really nice. Yeah.
Good. So this is the point where if you guys are just listening for the first time, this is going to be a out of 10 rating. So 10 being the best, we do 3 ratings: the whiskey, which is going to be the Wiseman Straight Bourbon, the cigar, which is the 601 Maduro Blue, and then the pairing between the two of them and how you rate that. Sean is in the audience. Sean's a frequent, pretty much every week in the audience, which we appreciate that support, and he enjoys it. He always gets the cigars that we're smoking, and then he also enjoys the bottle at the table. So he's
a lot of times Sean is the reason why we can say filmed in front of a live studio audience.
Right. Sometimes we'll have 8 people in here, and other times there's 0, but typically there's at least 1, and we appreciate your support. So Sean, go ahead with that.
Thanks, guys. So the cigar, I may have had once before. I don't remember much about it, but man, I forgot how good it was. It's really good. I give it a 9. I just like Nate hit it right, like the dark chocolate, it's heavy, but it's not like overpowering. I mean, it's not like where it's like so much smoke and it's just too harsh. The retro is like pretty good. It has a little spice to it, but it's also very flavorful too. It tastes really good.
Not really a pepper blast. Doesn't make you sneeze or anything like that.
No, not. I mean, there's some, but not where I've had before where it's insane. So give that a 9. The Wise, what is it called? The Wiseman. The Wiseman. I really liked it. It did stay with you. There's not much of a burn. Very, very good sweet flavor to it. Overall, there's the molasses, some the burnt caramel. That's where you get the flavors. I'm going to give that an 8.5, and then the pairing, I'd give that an 8.5 as well. I mean, I think they go okay together, and like the sweet and then the spice. There's kind of the spicy and the sweet, and it goes together well. So
appreciate that.
Yeah.
You ready to do your ratings there, Amy? Q&A again.
So I would say
on the whiskey.
Obviously, the first is the whiskey. Yeah. Obviously, just staying true to myself, staying on brand. I do love the whiskey. Like, very flavorful, especially for its proof. Like, if you see this, buy it. In my opinion.
You never had this before, correct?
I had not had this before, and I really enjoy this.
Would you buy this?
If I see this at arena next week, I'm buying it. Yeah, absolutely.
I know at least one place that carries it.
And then I'd say the pairing, and then I'd say the cigar, just because I'm not I'm relatively new to cigars, so this is like a new thing for me. I'm still kind of learning the ropes of how cigars are made and the flavors I should look for and all that good stuff. So. But I'd say it's better than a lot of the cigars I've had in the past, because pretty much every cigar I've had in the past has been a Maker's Mark or a Blanton cigar. So you can probably guess how
Yes, it's very different.
How narrow my cigar world was before tonight. So
on the whiskey, 1 out of 10.
10 being the best.
I would give it. I'd give it a 7.5, 8.
Okay. And the cigar.
Ooh, I give that. I give that like maybe an 8, 8.5.
Okay. And how about the pairing together?
I give that a 9.
All right. So on their own, good, but together, better.
Yeah, I really like it together. Yeah.
Nice. All right, Nate, go ahead.
All right. So for me, on the bourbon, I'm going to give and I'm going to do a lot of these because of Jonathan Herring. I'm going to get him drunk tonight.
Welcome, Jonathan.
Jonathan came up with our drinking game rules.
Yeah.
So on the whiskey, I'm going to give the whiskey a 7.5. I do enjoy it. It's very approachable. At 90.8, it's not something that's very rich. Doesn't necessarily just.
That's surprising.
It doesn't.
I thought you were going to rate higher based on the way you talked about it.
I think it is. I think it is. But like I said,
I'm also comparing it with my experience with the rye as well,
which I haven't had yet, which I'm hoping to have very, very soon.
Oh, we can make that happen. So I really enjoy the rye.
Yeah.
And which does come in 10 proof points higher, but I really love the flavor of the rye. The bourbon, it was good. It has good flavor. It's smooth. There's just nothing really on the flavor palette that jumps out at me. I mean, it has a good amount of sweetness to it. But and I for 90.8 proof, I wasn't expecting something very rich and robust.
Yeah.
But then again, it also is a $50 bottle in the state of Ohio.
There's the price.
There it is. And for that price point, I'd rather have the rye, which is the same price point.
Okay.
Which sometimes a rye will be more expensive. For this one, both the rye and the bourbon are the same price. They're both $50 in the state of Ohio. But then for other $50 bourbons or even less, there are some I like more that I get more flavor out of and that I just enjoy more. This was enjoyable, but not necessarily something I would go back and buy another bottle of. Like I've already bought another bottle of the rye.
Right.
That's what's sitting on the table.
That speaks.
Bourbon, I wouldn't necessarily buy another bottle of the bourbon personally, but I do enjoy it.
Same like the bourbon, I feel like is one like you would want to have it on your bar at least at one point. But like sense. I said, I haven't had the rye yet. I'm hoping
this is my one point.
I'm a rye person more than a bourbon person, despite my moniker. So I'd be very curious as to how that rye is.
Sometimes I'm known as the rye guy.
I used to be a bourbon person, but I'm now like a total like rye whore. Like spicy rye. Like I want dill. I want spearmint. I want clove and nutmeg.
Oh, then you'll like that.
Yes, I want sarsaparilla. I want all that.
Buckeye rye, or you said it. I'm not.
It's a little too late to rebrand.
You have like two of them. I don't know.
Yeah.
For the cigar. For the cigar, the 601 Blue 9.5.
Oh wow!
I love this cigar. This is absolutely one of my favorite cigars. Like I said earlier, it's my favorite Espinosa cigar. It's one of my top 5 cigars, which I am going to add on the community page, Steve and Nate's top 5.
Yeah.
But those are going to be, like not the limited edition one-offs. Those are going to be like the stuff that's readily available that we can get.
For sure.
This is one of those that I go back to a lot. There's a reason why I have, 5 or 6 of these in my humidor at home. I brought a couple of them with me. I brought another Short Churchill and a Toro with me because I love this cigar so much. Yeah.
That is commitment to the brand.
Yeah. This is my favorite product coming out of Espinosa.
601 day.
It is 601 day. As far as the pairing, for me, the pairing is going to be in the middle there. For me, the pairing's 8.25, 8.25. Going whiskey, then cigar. I don't taste as much of that richness, those dark cocoa notes of the cigar. When I do the cigar and then the whiskey, I get a little bit more sweetness out of the whiskey.
Yeah.
It comes across sweeter, a little thicker on the palate. But so that's why the pairing's in between for me. Like I like the cigar more by itself than with this whiskey, but I've had some other whiskeys with this cigar that were just an absolutely lights out pair.
Okay. For the bottle, for me, I'm kind of at it's good 7.5. I think this is something that you said it's 50.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of a unfortunately everyday price, but I think this is like I said, I like everything but the lingering finish. That is something that for me it's worth trying. I enjoy it. It's just not going to be to Nate's point. I'm not going to, now that we've had it here, I appreciate trying it. If I see it on a bar menu, if I see it at the store, I probably won't pick this up unless I have something coming up that I'm like, oh, I think someone would appreciate this that's coming over to the house or whatever.
Someone who likes the black jelly beans.
Someone likes.
So if I'm coming over,
if
I'm coming over, you'll get that, right?
My mom, she came over for Memorial Day, if she would ever have a glass of bourbon with me, this would maybe be the one, because I'd say, hang on. Oh, I don't like it. Hang on. Let it sit. Not so bad. It reminds me of Easter. For the cigar, I'm at like an 8.5. I really like this cigar. This is an everyday smoke type of a thing. You know what I mean? It's,
for us, yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't like. I'm not. It's 8.5 is a great rating. I think this is something. Again, we're not those the publications that you have to be at like 88 or better to be published. I think that 8.5 on this show is a great recommendation for. You can even buy a box if you want it in your humidor. I would say buy it if you're buying a handful of cigars for the weekend. This would be one I'd recommend. If you like that type of medium to full bodied, you give me some other things that you like, and this falls into that category. Solid smoke.
I find myself recommending the cigar a lot of times to people that are looking for that full body after dinner, rich, heavy smoke.
Yeah.
And I'm, like I said, I'm not normally a cigar person, but I really, really enjoy this. This is really delightful to smoke on.
We might have converted you.
Yeah, I think you succeeded.
The pairing, 7.5. It's okay. For me, I get what Amy was saying. I also think, and I'm not going to put words in your mouth, you've kind of stated, you haven't had a whole lot of cigars like this with a whiskey, a bourbon. So I'm actually kind of excited in a sense for you to continue doing this. You keep doing your what you've done, and we'll talk about in part 2 with the whiskey world, but on your own, start pairing some stuff. You know what I mean? Like try new cigars that you get recommended, or you listen to the show, or you see what we're smoking or other things. And you're like, you know what? That sounds pretty good. I'm going to grab a couple of those. And when I'm at my own place, I'm going to crack a bottle or pour a whiskey that I really like already. And I'm going to smoke a cigar with it and see how it changes it. Because to me, I don't think it makes it better or worse. I think they're both fine. I'm separate from Nate. Also, I don't think it really takes away as much. I get the cigar. I get the whiskey every time. These guys stand alone. They stand up against each other. So yeah, I mean, 7.5, I think it's again, if this is if a friend brings over that cigar or this bottle, I think that you'll have a fine night. It'll go well.
It'll be fine.
They don't good. Yeah. It's not blowing me away.
Yeah.
And it's not bringing anything out from either one. And I can probably, we could crack the rye, that might go better. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm very curious at the rye.
Or if we lit the Monte Cristo white with the bourbon, that might go better.
It could.
Just because of a little lighter and everything else. So with that being said, guys, stay tuned for part 2. We're going to take a quick intermission on the live feed. If you're listening to the audio podcast, click over to part 2. But I do want to throw out rattle off the sponsors. You guys, patreon.com/bourbonbs podcast. You guys doing the monthly stuff is tremendous, and we feel the love and we appreciate that. If you guys want to do a one-time contribution, or if you there we go. Or if you want to buy us a bottle, tell us what to get, throw us that Venmo, and we will take care of that absolutely the best we can. And also, Tinderbox is Easton for the 601 Blue Maduro. listen, if you guys are just tuning in now on the live feed, make sure you listen to part 1 so you can hear what we have to say about that. We actually started the episode with that, which I was surprised having Amy on. I thought we'd be all bourbon. We actually did some cigar stuff in the beginning. But I also want to thank Altadis USA. We're going to be lighting up the Monte Cristo White Toro. Mm-hmm. And then also BS Cigar Company. You guys are amazing. Gold and silver are available. Gold is made by Plasencia, and the silver is also made by Espinosa. So we appreciate all that. And if you guys like some of the swag you see on the show, or if you're looking for some whiskey shirts or cigar shirts, buyjack.com/bourbon and BS for those shirts. And that's very easy. They're very accommodating, and they'll get that out to you as quickly as they can. So guys, cheers to part 1. Thank you. Happy Whiskey Wednesday. Happy 601 day. Amy, thank you for joining us for your first podcast. Cheers. Clear. All right, now is the time where we actually take a quick intermission. If anyone needs to use the restroom, go ahead. If not, I'm ready to go when everyone else is. Silence. Charlie Creekmore says, cheers. Thanks, Amy.
You're welcome.
You guys let me know when you are ready. They're both on their phones right now. It's fine.
I'm checking my likes. No.
What's that? Fucking Angry Birds. I swear to God. Amy, did you share this on any of your stuff?
Whenever he tagged me in, I shared to my Instagram story. So
perfect. If you guys are listening now during the intermission, but please share it, like it, review it.
Are you in, Amy, are you in any of the, like some of the local whiskey groups on Facebook or anything like that?
Yes, I'm in Central Ohio Whiskey Society. I'm in Ohio Bourbon Hunters. I'm in Central Ohio Bourbon. I'm in like basically every group.
Okay. Actually, and you and I talked about it a little bit when I did that that private tasting at Watershed for their single barrel releases. I met Eric, who heads the Central Ohio Whiskey Society.
Honestly, he's not really big on Instagram, but he is easily Ohio's top influencer. Like from what I've heard, like whenever he does reviews, like the shit sells out because so many people are in that Facebook group. And
which one was that?
Central Ohio Whiskey Society, Eric Smith.
Yeah.
Because
I remember after I posted a picture on social media of the group that you want to hold off on the rye until the rye comes, or yes, go ahead and finish that then. But yeah, I had posted a picture of the group that did that social media tasting, and someone goes, "Wait, you got Nate, you got Eric Smith, and you got this other guy who has his own podcast. Like those three together, like what the hell's coming down the pipe?"
Where was this?
That was at Watershed.
Oh, nice.
when we did that single barrel tasting before the release of the 6 bottles.
Yeah.
I posted a picture of the group that was there for that tasting.
I'm kind of not mad that I was invited to that because, well, we've talked about that. So
this is the intermission. So this will be on the Facebook and YouTube. It won't be on the audio.
There's still someone may hear.
I'm not gonna.
But you did say you like that Eve's Blind blend.
Not the blind.
Or no, the
single barrel that was available at Watershed. Yeah.
So that's a that's a straight Watershed product.
Yeah. That's like the first thing I've had and I really, really liked. It's like for me, it's like white chocolate and honey.
Yeah. It's interesting to see where they're going.
Raspberry. It was so good. I really liked that.
It was
the black label.
I haven't had the Eve's Blind one. I didn't want to spend $150 on it. So
no, it was aggressive pricing, and we've talked about that on the show already.
Yeah, I got mine 4 weeks after the initial drawing because too many people passed on their bottles. I'm like, yep, I'll take it.
It's good.
Expensive, but it was a very good bottle. But yeah, when I did that, there was 5 of their recent like 4 to 5 year bottled in bond type bottles, and then there was one bottle or one barrel that was their old 5-grain mash bill with the Ohio Svelte, which is probably why you were like, I'm not the biggest fan of their. Yeah.
And I've had their bottled and bond. I've had their apple brandy. I just wish my favorite local. If we're talking local, my favorite distillery is probably High Bank.
That's what I was going to guess.
I'm a High Bank hoe.
Did you get their last double oak?
I got a sample of it for free.
I lucked out and bought one.
And I'm getting a couple of their samples for the new ones. So
good.
They always hook me up. So I have a lot of love for them, and I really, really do love their product.
And they just won 5 double golds in San Francisco.
They did, yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
They are doing great things. That new location of theirs too.
The New Albany. So I haven't been to the New Albany location.
So my girlfriend's been there now twice, and the biggest complaint, the only complaint actually, is the parking. The parking. And
wait, how is the parking even worse than the Grandview? Because the Grandview parking sucks itself already.
So you've got the barn on its own across the street. I thought for sure that parking lot where there's a liquor store, there's the Donato's that they want in. I'm like, there's got to be enough parking there. No, I mean, there's just not. And they're new, right? So, I mean, they are getting lit up. So for brunch, for happy hour, they're getting blown up. So they're full. So it might level out, which is bad for them. But I mean, that's just expected. They started doing valet for like $7 though. And I'm like, I feel as though like I get it, especially while you're new. But if you continue the valet, like, I mean, you've got the barn, which is a Mitchell's restaurant right across the street. Like, I don't even know if they charge quotes for valet or they just do valet and they expect you to give money. You know what I mean? Like, it's just one of those things. So I think they'll figure it out.
No, I think they charge at the barn. Like I was dating a guy a couple years ago in 2020, and he lived out like off Morse Road in like the LC. We went there for his birthday, and it's
great.
We just parked on our own, so because we didn't want to spend the money for valet because we knew
they've got a big lot. I mean, that was just something that they had. They
and it's like there's no point of doing valet there because there is so much parking available.
There is. But yeah, you guys want to roll into part 2?
Yep.
You lit up the Monte Cristo White. I like it.
I did. Well, I still have some of the bourbon. Yeah.
Are you cracking the rye for the part 2?
I can.
Can you please? That's my preferred spirit.
Jeez, everyone. All right. So while you guys do that, I'm going to go ahead and intro part 2 here. So
shoot. It's all right. It's all right.
Welcome back to the Bourbon and BS podcast, everyone. This is episode 223, part 2, Beyond the BS. We reviewed in part 1, so if you haven't listened to it, check that out for a review of the 601 Blue Maduro from Espinosa Cigars. This is 601 Day. We are recording this on June 1st, so we in the cigar community have this as 601 Day. As far as the bottle that we cracked and are reviewing on part 1, it was the Wiseman, and that's their bourbon coming out of Kentucky Owl. So check that out if you haven't listened to it already, or if you're tuning in now. It's a good cork.
That was a really good cork pop.
Charlie Creekmore says, "Get to cracking, Nate."
Got it.
Just did. It's on a delay.
All right.
So for part 2, this is where, Amy, this is your first time on the show, first time on a podcast. This is not necessarily the norm as far as format when you get onto a cigar, or especially what you'll probably be on more often, which is going to be a whiskey podcast.
Yeah.
I think this part is sprinkled in a little bit, but we've formatted this podcast to a point where part 1 is definitely more of that part. I think this will lead into what'll probably be in a lot of, like, when they ask you about what you're doing and all that stuff, that's going to lead into our life topic. We typically will do that with, if we have a guest on, which is typical, we'll have that influence what we're talking about in part 2. So part 2 is the, are you being a good steward? And that comes from you being, what is your absolute like certification title?
So I am an executive bourbon steward, certified through State and Thesis Society at Moonshine University in Louisville. I'm also working on another certification as well, but that one is more of that one is called Certified Bourbon Professional, and that's through Council of Whiskey Masters. But we're talking about my bourbon steward certification through Moonshine University, which, I mean, there's not a whole lot to being a bourbon steward. It's being knowledgeable and being hospitable and really tailoring what you're educating to your guests or who you are. Like if you're a bourbon steward and you work in an establishment, like, or even if you're at home and like you're having guests who aren't, like for me, like I have guests who come over who don't really know anything about bourbon.
Yeah.
And I just ask, hey, it's really about having a nice, easy dialogue about what flavors do they like, what do they want to taste, and kind of going from there and having that kind of conversation to kind of get to a point where you know what you want to share with them, to like maybe it's like, oh, I like this.
Yeah.
It's like you want to be a guide, you want to be an educator, but you don't want to force what you think and what you like on them. You really want to take in what they like into account. That's really the big thing. It should be about them, not about you.
Yeah. So Nate, you sent me a little bit about what being a steward is, or stewardship.
Yeah. Based on Merriam-Webster, based on the Merriam-Webster definition of stewardship.
Yeah.
First definition: the office, duties, and obligations of a steward. Second is the conducting, supervising, or managing of something, especially the careful and responsible management of something entrusted to one's care.
So I will say this, one of the biggest things when I think of this, and I want to get to what you are doing, Amy, with all of this, but I was trying to, everyone, and maybe this is just my level of intelligence here, but I think that the word steward is used a lot in the church.
Yes.
And I think more commonplace is what?
Money.
Okay.
Oh, you were thinking something else.
A steward or a stewardess is typically associated with what?
Service
industry, airlines.
Airline, stewardess, all that.
I think airline is probably the most common use of this word in the
that's the only
culture.
Place where I've ever heard the word steward or stewardess used as a job title.
Correct. And that is exactly what you said. On that plane, they are not only obviously they are the connection between the pilot and everyone on the plane. So they have that responsibility. But the biggest thing is to, as a consumer, is they are catering to make sure that you are knowledgeable what's going on the flight,
and that you're having a good experience. It's all about guest experience.
Your needs are being met. Absolutely.
That's in any way. That's kind of what being a steward is all about. Bourbon steward, an airline steward. It's all about making sure that the guests are having a great experience and that you're tailoring the experience to what they are wanting. So
absolutely. So
it's not about you at all. It's about them.
And so tell us, what it is that you actually had to go through. You've got this book in front of you. I feel like you have this page in general opened up.
It defines what a steward is. So
what does it say? Like, what is the book is from where you got certified, correct?
Yes. So okay. I have a book here. It's the Stave and Thief Society Bourbon Steward Whiskey Book, which anyone who does the Executive Bourbon Steward course at Moonshine University in Louisville gets when they do the executive course. There's also a certified course, which I did. Then you get a paperback version sent to your house, and You can do it online. And so basically that. So when I did my course, it was a whole day of learning everything about bourbon that I already learned from doing certified, just from my own research.
Mm-hmm.
And
why did you want to do this?
Because at the time, I knew I wanted to do something with it someday once this stupid pandemic was over.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Did you start this in 2020?
Yeah. So I did this course, I did the certified course early 2020 with my online, and then in December 2020, me and my father went down to Louisville together, and we both did the Executive Bourbon Steward course together. It's just a fun father-daughter bonding thing.
Nice.
Because I knew I wanted to do something with whiskey down the road, but I just kind of needed some time and the pandemic to wait out the pandemic and see what was going to happen. So I kind of realized I kind of want to start doing tastings, lean tastings,
mm-hmm.
and pair dinners, that kind of thing. So,
and that's where you started the handle, right?
No, I started the handle before I did.
Did you?
Yes,
Buckeye Bourbon Girl.
I started mostly just creating content and reviewing whiskey and
mm-hmm.
all that good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I was actually just recently I started my website, and I started leading some pilot tastings, free tastings for some groups of my girlfriends and I at my condo. And like I said, I curate them. I curate them of line it beforehand. But like when I get into it, the tasting port, I'm like, hey, I'm not going to tell you what to taste. You guys like explore for yourselves. And like I leave out little nibblies. Like I leave out like pretzels and wasabi. Wasabi peas like are the best. Peggy No Stevens taught me that in the Bourbon Women's Symposium seminar. Toasted 10th. Wasabi peas with like really sweet, like low, like Weeders, like Maker's Mark. Chef's kiss, amazing. And dark chocolate and nuts. Like,
are these to complement? Or are they to
cleanse the
palate?
Yeah.
Well, no, I usually give crackers. I give oyster crackers to cleanse the palate. These are to kind of like enhance or like kind of give a contrast to certain flavors. Like I said, like say with Maker's Mark, you get like the sweet flavors and all that. But then with wasabi pea, it's all spicy and it kind of you get a really, really, really nice contrast there.
Yeah. Nate, why'd you want to do this topic?
Well, so I picked the idea of like being a steward based on her title of an executive bourbon steward and you had messaged me before about when you were having a group of people over and you were going to have some friends over and you were going to do a tasting with them. And so that kind of hit me with that idea of being a steward, because you literally have people coming to you that want to try different whiskeys and they want to learn. They are entrusting you to teach them, to educate them on what they're tasting, what they're doing. So that way it is an enjoyable experience and something that they want to do again. Someone who may not be much into the whiskey world and wants to get into it, like a lot of times they'll go and do a distillery tour because they want to hear from someone firsthand the knowledge of that distillery, how products are made, but then also walk them through that tasting of why you're tasting what you're tasting, why you do things in a certain order. Like when Steve and I a year ago went down to Old Forester, we had a great tour guide there, and we had all 4 of their Whiskey Row products. And great!
I feel like that's the best like tasting tour you can do, a little hands down.
It was pretty good, and like she made it very clear. Like we're gonna start out with the first one, which is the 1868 or whatever.
That's actually like my next tasting.
1870, yeah.
My next tasting event is actually going to be in Old Forester. Like I was going to lead it this past weekend, but obviously I had COVID, so I had to postpone it.
They didn't know that,
right? But yes. And so I'm leading it not this weekend, but next weekend. It's a Whiskey Row like tasting.
Yeah.
So
you're leading one?
Yes, at my condo for some friends.
Nice. So you're basically practicing like what you've accomplished so far.
Exactly. They're my pilot group.
I like that. I like that a lot.
But when we did that tour, the lady said, all right, we're starting with the 1870. Then we're going to go to the bottled and bond, the 1910, the 1920. But she made it very clear, like, hey, we're drinking the 1870 first. Save some for later. And there were at least 2 people in the group that did not follow instructions.
Oh, I always encourage, like, hey, save a little bit for later for the rest. So, like, because I want people, like, after the tasting, after they've had their sips and they kind of taste, they make their notes and they discuss what they feel. Like, I want them to, like, kind of compare them all together.
Yeah.
And, like, I wanted to go through and, like,
the reason she wanted everyone to hold on to some of that
18 water in it.
No, it wasn't that.
Oh no.
So 1870, that was the first sips that we had. So our palates were just getting acclimated to the whiskey. Yeah. So then we went through the whole lineup, and then she wanted us to come back to the 1870 after our palates had acclimated to drinking bourbon and now taste it and see how it tasted different. And everyone that paid attention and followed instructions, when we went back to that, that 1870 tasted so different. It was so much bolder and richer, and it was much more enjoyable. The lady who's doing our tour, because she does so many tours and drinks so much whiskey, she wasn't really sipping on any of hers, so she was pouring hers into the glasses of the people who couldn't follow the instructions. But it was that whole idea to like make
which
that
you'll probably find. Sorry.
Yeah. But it was to make that experience as enjoyable as possible. So that way everyone that was there got as much out of it as possible. And that's kind of what you're doing when you're doing your tastings with friends. Mm-hmm. You want them to enjoy it, to have a good experience. And, you know, if they're not whiskey people, maybe convert them into being whiskey people. But it all starts with having a good host, someone that they are entrusting that experience to.
I like the what you had sent me, because I'm thinking about this, you know, in this arena that you're doing, Amy, is that it's the managing part, right? So as you, like, I don't know your friends, but I also know my friends. I know my friends' friends. I know groups of people in general. There's an interesting mix. They're not always the same. In fact, they're typically never all the same personalities. You always have you always have that the different personalities. The person that is the life of the party, the introvert, the extrovert, whatever. You know, like you have all these different personality types, right? Absolutely. And that will influence a night out. That'll influence a group text. That'll influence everything. The fact you're doing with his friends, I think, is brave. I think with strangers, you may be able to.
But here's the thing: these people are actually, for the most part, strangers. So I'm in a Facebook group called the Columbus Girl Gang, and I'm also in the Columbus 30-40 Girl Gang, and that's where I kind of sort of say, like, "Hey, I'm going to lead a free tasting. Okay. Hey, sign up or message me." So like these are all different women, like people who some people who I'd met before, some I hadn't. So like people from different backgrounds. Like, so technically they are like, even though they're kind of, most of them are friends now, they are strangers.
I guess
and I'm doing the same thing with my next tasting. Like,
I guess my point is that the managing part of it is that no matter if you have 2 people or you have 8 people or more, when you have even an intimate group, when you're trying to be a steward, right? Mm-hmm. So what you might go into it as, especially like you might know where you're at now, but say you are like that tour guide, or say you're working with a smaller distillery and they hire you to do the tasting, right? The event. Yeah. And you walk in there and you're not a part of a Facebook group. These are just people that came to the event.
Oh my God, I love that. I love that environment.
And that's good, because part of it, I think you have to really think on your feet and also do the whole first impressions, you know, like, all right, so who is, and this might be, I'm not trying to be insulting, but it's like, all right, who is that really shy person that's not going to say anything, that they might come up at the end of it and say thank you very much, like they did when you're at the Old Forester thing as a consumer, but who is the person that is going to, you know, who's the alpha in the group that's going to try to take over my side of things and basically try to run it, the know-it-all. Yeah. I call it the alpha.
Or in that sense. I should find them, like how I find the me in that group.
That's fair. That's fair. But it's like, I think part of being a good steward is, and we're talking specifically about this type of a thing, but it is absolutely that management side of it, of personalities. I think that being a good steward is someone that can, going back to the plane scenario, right? Being a steward or stewardess, right? That plane, bunch of strangers, and you have all different personality types, and they have different expectations of what they want to get out of that flight. Same thing with doing a flight of whiskey, metaphor intended or whatever. Mm-hmm.
But that was nice.
I know, I shouldn't have said anything. It's just rolled with it. Hope you guys picked up on it. But it's something that you don't know who's going to sit down or be looking at you as the steward of that situation, that with what you're doing, not everyone is expecting the same thing out of you. So when you are being that steward, and I'm interested, like the steward's role, which it sounds like is probably going to address that, is that you want everyone to get out of it to the best of your ability, everyone to get out of it what they wanted to, but you don't know what they want to get out of it. So it's almost like not only are you doing your presentation that you practice, you've rehearsed, you've done all this, but now it's like, now I got people in front of me. But this isn't just an audience where I'm just talking to them. This is an interaction. This is people that are now sitting in front of me. Now I have to think on the fly. Who are you? Who are you? Who are you? Who are you? What do you want? What do you want? What do you want? And I've got this information to convey to you. Mm-hmm. but you may not care about what I just said about that. You think you know more than me. You want more of it. So how do I cater to this entire group to a point that you all walk out of here learning something, enjoying it, and then at the end of it, I can genuinely shake everyone's hand in this room and say, I really enjoyed this. You know, that's a challenge, in my opinion.
And honestly, like, here's the thing. What people like feel like a lot of people have this fear of like asking questions for what they want their consumer base to know, because you need to know everything. Like, and you should know, a fair amount, but like, you're not a mind reader. Mm-hmm. You're really not. And there's nothing wrong. There's no shame in asking them what they want to get out of it. Like, straight up asking them what they want to get out of it. I would go to that quiet person, hey, I introduce myself. Hey, what are you wanting to learn? And
how do you do that? How do you do that without, again, I'm trying to like really like harness a little bit of the scenario. You inhaled again, didn't you?
No, I didn't. No, I didn't.
I'm just joking.
Maybe she accidentally tried to retrohale.
So, but how do you do that? Because that is part of the personality type. If you're standing up in front of a group and you have a quiet person and you're saying, all right, so everyone's chiming in, how do you not embarrass that person or let them allow them to close up more because you've now put them in the spotlight? That's not what they want.
No.
So is there techniques? Is there a way to be like, all right, so everyone take a sip of this. I'm going to kind of walk around and talk to each of you.
That's what I do. So when I
like that.
When I get to the tasting point, it's like, hey, I'm going to let you guys because like I told you, like I personally don't give tasting notes because I want my tasters to discover for themselves, like what they taste, what they smell. Mm-hmm. Like I don't want to have any kind of effect on them. I want to discover themselves. I want them to fiddle around with the little nibblies that they've got and all that. And then I'll go up to them in like small groups and ask, and then I'll talk to them in like a comfortable way and say, hey, like, what are you are you having a good time? Like, what are you tasting? What are you smelling? Is there anything else I can answer for you? And I'll
what if someone's like, no, it's really good.
I'll do like, what are you tasting? What are you smelling?
Okay. I'm not trying to be difficult.
I'll be like, what are you tasting? What are you smelling? And if you can't come up with anything, I'll make like.
I think that's.
And then I'll kind of very subtly come and say, hey, is there anything I can do? Like, that kind of thing. It's all about keeping it like low key and subtle. You don't want to like single anybody out. That's not cool. Nobody likes that. Nobody liked that in school. Nobody likes that now.
Yeah,
so,
I think that's a great point.
That's kind of what I do sometimes when I do. So last Friday, I was at Bourbon and Bullets at a local shooting range. And
what is that?
Bourbon and Bullets is at Blackwing Shooting Center. They do a few of them a year. Basically people show up and they either depend on the weather, they either do an indoor shooting, an outdoor clay course shooting, but then afterwards people hang around on the patio. Maybe there's a fire if it's cool enough, and they'll drink different whiskeys, and they have a share table. And people will bring whiskey to share. Some people will bring their own bottles and just sit at the table and just, drink what they brought. Other people bring, because the rule is really, if you want to drink something off the share table, you got to put something on the share table. But I show up there to sell cigars because obviously it's a gun range. It's not a cigar shop. They do have, and I noticed this the first time I went to an event there. I went to that event. They just have this little tiny plexiglass humidor that has just an array of cigars. They're all labeled, but there's no one there that works there that is, that works in the cigar industry. And so when I was talking to the head of marketing there, I had offered to, because I work at a cigar shop, I would actually bring cigars. And so that's what I do when these events go on. Is I will bring like typically a mild, medium, fuller body, not necessarily like the most strong full body, sometimes medium full.
Notice you didn't take any BS this last time.
I was trying to get rid of some leftover product. I took BS last time. Unless you want me to take a BS box, because I have to have something to display it in. I don't want to take just a bundle.
All right.
But I show up there and I have a table. And I sell cigars to these people, and these people will come up to me, and it's surprising how many of them are not avid cigar smokers that are coming up and they'll buy a cigar because of that event. And so I sit there and I'll educate them on the cigars that I bring. And, I'll ask them the same questions I ask when I'm working at the tinderbox. Like, what do you normally like to smoke? What do you like? What are you in the mood for? What are you drinking? Because sometimes that one's a little tough because there's like 14 bottles on the share table. So they're drinking all sorts of different stuff. Rye, whiskeys, barrel proof. It varies. So I sit there and I try to determine what I think will be the best cigar based on their experience and what they're looking for. But then also what I'll do is I'll go back around to the people that have bought a cigar that they and a lot of times it's cigars that they haven't smoked before. And I will go back and ask them like, hey, what do you think of that cigar? And I do that at the tinderbox as well. If someone came in, asked for a recommendation, they bought a cigar, but they're hanging out and smoking it. Later on, I'll go back to them while they're still smoking that cigar and ask them what they think about that. And one of the things I love about the industry is like when I go back to that person and they tell me how much they enjoyed that recommendation. So late in the evening, there was a gentleman who came up and he normally smokes all Dominican. So he's typically that mild medium type cigar smoker. Yeah. And he bought the cigar I brought that was full body, which happened to be the AJ New World that we featured last week on the podcast.
Nice.
And
well played. So
this guy who was
you're forgiven.
This guy who is primarily a Dominican cigar smoker is smoking this, this all Nicaraguan Oscuro wrap cigar, fuller body, full flavor, not what he typically smokes. As soon as he started taking puffs off that cigar, he's like, wow, this is different than what I'm smoking. Like this it's
kind of like Amy with what she was saying about
this is not what I'm
smoked the infused ones with bourbon and all that stuff, and then she smokes 601 Blue, and you're like, well, you don't smoke a whole lot of cigars. Like, I'm like, take it easy on it. This is fucking great. This is what I've been missing.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I love about doing that event is because it's not working in a cigar shop, but it's still cigars.
Yeah, working at a cigar shop's terrible.
But it's that education. It's that education aspect of it where people are coming up to you. They're entrusting you to make a recommendation that fits what they're in the mood for. And there are some people that are like, yeah, I'm a mild cigar smoker. Like, all right, here's the mild cigar I brought. And, usually those people are like, cool. And, there won't be much else because typically the mild cigar I bring is a very popular mild cigar.
Yeah.
And so most of them have had that before. But this week I'd taken that Plasencia Reserva, which is who also makes the BS Gold.
Taking the BS Gold.
I took the BS Gold the last time. Yeah. All right, calm down. But I took the Plasencia Reserva, and most of the people, actually everyone that bought that cigar had never smoked that cigar before, and they'd never even heard of it.
Yeah.
So once I started talking to them about what it is and what's in that cigar, the blend, kind of like with whiskey, the mash bill, like there was an appreciation for what they were smoking. There was an appreciation for me being there, being that source of knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And I love having that responsibility in the cigar world. Working retail, people come in specifically, and there's a lot of people that are looking for a recommendation. It surprises me still how many of our regulars, some of our locker members, people that come there almost every day, that will still ask for a recommendation. Even though they may know more about cigars than me, there's a few people.
Part of the experience, right?
Yeah, it's part of the experience. And so like when certain customers that are in the tinderbox, you probably know who I'm talking about. They absolutely do know more about cigars and tobacco than I do, but they'll still ask me for a recommendation.
They want to try something new. I think that is that stewardship part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think there's
Speaking of which,
I think there's
actually, what am I doing right now?
You're toasting the foot
of
the Monte Cristo White series.
For who?
For Amy.
That's right.
Which is
you're done with the other one now. For now.
Yes.
I know you like it. No, you don't have to throw it in there. I'm just saying. Try that. It's completely different.
It's not as strong.
It's not as strong.
It's very subtle.
Subtle. Get into that a little bit. I think that go on.
Well, so when it's a new customer coming in or looking for recommendations, there's a little bit of pressure to recommend something that they're going to enjoy. When it's one of our
why is there pressure?
Because that person is spending their hard-earned money on a cigar, and they're specifically coming to you to spend that money, and they want something that's worth the money. And so if I can recommend a cigar to them and they enjoy it, that makes me feel good.
So why else is there pressure? So someone coming in, like say it's not a locker member, right? So it's just someone coming in.
You want them to come back.
Okay.
You want them to enjoy the experience.
There it is. And why do you want them to enjoy the experience?
They'll tell people about it. They will tell people about it.
Thank you, Amy. That's a big part of it. I think there's also this genuine side of you, Nate, you, Amy, a lot of people out there is that they are coming to you as the expert. So
they want to learn something.
Nate,
they want to get something out of it.
You know, you're the cigar guy at Bourbon and Bullets Bourbon and Bullets. You're the cigar guy at the tinderbox when you help a customer. You're the cigar guy when a neighbor or someone literally asks you on Instagram or social media, like, what do you think about this? There's a sense of pride, right? But that's being a good steward. I think there is something that it's not, yes, there is a part of it when it comes to like the business or like this venture you're doing, Amy. You want people that come to your events, whether it be acquaintances, friends, or if you get hired on to do something, you come on a podcast as the bourbon expert. It's the fact that you want to, your hard work, your passion, you want it to be conveyed that people enjoy it. And it's not, there's two-way street, right?
Yeah.
You want to feel like you did a good job. That's natural. I think that's with anything.
For me, it's like, I feel like if someone comes away from one of my tastings having learned something, then I did my job. Learned something they didn't know before, and that they're really happy they learned.
They learned something, and they enjoyed learning from you.
Yeah,
exactly. I think that's being a good steward, because being a steward is that you're doing a job, whether or not you're being paid for it. Literally, it's just the fact that you have a passion for something, that you are that person. You're the Buckeye Bourbon Girl. You're the cigar guy. You're whatever it is. You're on a podcast. You do all this stuff. Is that you have this level of expected expertise or at least knowledge. Maybe not an expert, but your knowledge. You have a passion, and they go to you because they think of you in that light. They trust you. So it's not about necessarily making them think the way you think. I like this. You should like this. This is popular. Everyone likes this. You should like this. No, it's let's figure out what you like and what questions do you have. One of the things I love about interactions with people, and this is something that you have to work on, especially as a steward. And that's what I was getting into with you, Amy, is that at your events, when you look at these people that you might be acquainted with, or you may not be, but you're trying to really decipher who they are, what's their personality type. I do encourage anyone trying to be a good steward or an expert on anything is not to be a know-it-all, but to really know your audience.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
I think that you really have to understand personality types.
Yeah. And like when I grew up, I moved around a lot. And when you move around a lot like me, like you kind of learn how to read people. So it's all about kind of reading people and kind of reading their body language and like how they're interacting and kind of tailoring your interactions with them to like something that's they're going to be comfortable with. So
on my way here, as I mentioned in part one, I had stopped at a local liquor store.
What should I drink here? This one?
Have you had the rye yet? You poured the rye.
I did.
If you're still
trying to hold on to,
if you're still smoking the Monte Cristo white, go back to the bourbon.
Good call.
No, so as I mentioned in part one, on my way here tonight, I stopped by a local liquor store and got the Wiseman Bourbon. And I was in there, I was looking at other stuff, thinking about what to do for tonight's podcast. And there was a gentleman also in the bourbon aisle who was from Virginia.
Okay.
And he was looking for stuff that he can't get there.
Oh,
and initially he asked the person working at the store if they had any Buffalo Trace, and I had to explain to this guy, like, no, here, like, we're the 4th largest bourbon market in the country. Buffalo Trace, you have to like wait for the truck to show up.
And it's like that in Virginia too.
Yeah, and there's a lot of, he was talking about there's a lot of stuff allocated there. So he had a bottle in his hand. He was also looking for other stuff. He's like, what do you have that's local?
Yeah.
And the person that was working the counter had to go ring up another customer. So he couldn't address that person's question. No, that was at Chateau's on Sawmill. Chateau's Wine and Spirits on Sawmill. So because that employee had to go ring up a customer, I was like, hey, I'll point you out in a couple local stuff. And I was telling, like, hey, this is a local brand. You know, here's what I like from them. You know, they had a few options, like, you know, from what they have, I'd buy this bottle. Here's another great local product that, you know, just won some double gold medals. You know, that's another good one to try. And I was like, you know, this is what we're probably going to have on the podcast tonight. And he's like, oh, you do a podcast?
Oh, there it is.
Started talking. That's like the 3rd time now that I've gone to a liquor store on my way to the podcast and started telling someone about. The first 2 times, it was someone who actually listens to the podcast already. This one was someone who hadn't heard of it, but right there in the store, he pulls out his phone and pulls up Bourbon and BS podcast. And I was like, yeah, we do it live tonight. We're on Facebook and YouTube, or you can go to all the other, podcast platforms and download previous episodes or listen to them. And he's like, yeah, I'll tune in. I hope he watched part 1.
What's his name?
Didn't even ask for his name.
That's cool. It's so for the dude, come on, bro.
Like, literally, I was just having a conversation with the guy.
You're being a good steward.
Yeah. I was trying to make a recommendation to something you like, but also
a very good example of that.
But also make a recommendation like, hey, we're people that do a podcast. Like, you can come to, like, you can actually listen, and it's not just about listening to tonight's podcast, but you can go back to all the other episodes and look at reviews that we've done on other stuff and see if that sounds intriguing. That's one of the reasons why on the community page, there's that pinned post of all the different whiskeys that we've tried. So that way, if someone's thinking about trying something, they can see the different whiskeys that we've had in 222 prior episodes.
That's 223.
This is 223. Good number.
And there are just so many people like in liquor stores who just like want to learn. Like, about a month and a half ago, maybe 2 months ago, I had an experience at the Giant Eagle in Grandview.
Yep.
I was buying up the Old Elk Infinity bottle, is the last one.
Good bottle.
But there was a gal, she just wanted to buy a few bottles. She's just trying to buy a few bottles. So, like, she's like, I want to just start a bourbon bar. And, like, I literally spent like half an hour with her, like, kind of educating her and like.
Because of the passion.
As a passion, like telling her what I like, but like asking her what she likes and what she's looking for, and the kind of guiding her in different bottles. And she ended up with 4 bottles that she really likes. So
did you drop the whole like I'm an executive?
No, I just said that I know my bourbon. I know my bourbon. Like, I know my shit.
That's good. I like that. You know,
I didn't say I'm an executive bourbon steward.
You didn't brag about yourself.
I didn't say that I'm a whiskey Instagrammer. I didn't say anything like that. I just said, hey, I know my bourbon. Like, I'd be happy to help you. And she like.
I'd encourage both of you, Nate and Amy, that in that conversation at some point, you can even say like, you know, well, Amy, you are certified. Nate, we're not. But it's okay to say that too. Is that, hey, where I'm coming from is that I'm so passionate about this that I do a podcast about it. You know, I have studied this. Not only am I passionate about it, but like you're not selling, like you're qualifying yourself because anyone in a liquor store, anyone in a cigar shop, anytime someone is literally sitting there on the side of the like I don't know, like you run into someone in a store and they look like they're having a rough day. And you're just like, yeah, you can reach out to me if you need to. You know what I mean? It's like, that's being a good steward. And that's the topic of this, is that you qualifying yourself. I think a lot of people think that they view it as they're selling themselves for not malicious, but it's like this, like for a gain,
personal
type of
gain,
thing.
Yeah. Selfishness.
Some people might take it off-putting, right? You know what I mean? So like you have that conversation. You're like, at the end of it, maybe throw it out there, Amy, like, hey, if you're ever interested, like follow me on Instagram if you're on Instagram, or
it's
reach out.
It's actually like I lied. Like I did mention the Executive Bourbon Steward thing. I did mention that. Okay, I lied. I did mention that. I did not mention the Instagram. I did not mention the Instagram thing though at all.
Well, so that's your fault.
But I'm like, I mean, like,
they could have watched the podcast.
Like, I don't know. I don't know. She's on Instagram. I'm not trying to promote my Instagram. I'm just trying to help the girl. So
but I think you can do both.
So I spent like basically half an hour with her in the liquor store, like kind of got educating her about different brands and products and guiding her until like she wanted like a few standbys for her bar, and she ended up with some products that she's really happy with. So yeah, I did my job.
Jonathan Herring threw it out there.
It was honestly one of my most rewarding experience in a liquor store. You know, like the scene in Parks.
There's a lot of low points in a liquor store.
But do you know the scene in Parks and Rec where like Ron Swanson is trying to fix up Andy and April's apartment? He goes into like Home Depot.
Or Home Depot. Yeah,
I know more than you. That's me. That's me.
There's a lot of whiskey memes about
that. That's me in a liquor store, but I'm not an asshole like that.
Can I help you find it?
I'm like, no,
Ron
I know my
Swanson
shit.
was not an asshole. I feel like
it's like I know my shit.
Direct.
You can leave me. Please leave me alone. I know my shit. Leave me alone. So.
Anything I help you find, I know more than you.
So I kind of.
But I do want to hang on real quick on the live feed right now, and it's tough to. I don't think it's a link that you can click on, but Jonathan Herring already looked you up.
They can copy paste.
Go to Instagram.com, but it's Buckeye Bourbon Girl is your
Instagram handle. Yeah.
Call sign.
Did you just see Top Gun Maverick?
I want to.
Does he have a problem with it?
It's awesome.
Oh, he followed me. Gotcha.
Who?
Jonathan.
So that's my point. Yeah. So that's the community that we have, is that there's some support there. But that's really cool to hear, because
thanks, Jonathan.
Again, it is about catering to people, whether or not it's in your interest, it's just the greater goal. And I think that's what a good steward does.
It's really about the guests, like their interests. Like the main thing you got to remember is to put their wants and needs in there, what they want above what you want. That's really the main thing. Like, you do not converse in this.
Yeah, I think a bad steward or whatever, or like if you're trying to do what you're doing, would be that exactly. It's like, I want to make everyone that comes to this event, anyone that talks to me, talks with me, is that they come out of this thinking like me.
Yeah.
They think they need to have the same palate. They need to have the same viewpoints.
Yeah. It's like, I don't expect anyone to be like me. Like, I'm a spicy, like I said, rye person, rye whore, I guess. And it's like, I know a lot of newcomers, like it'll take a lot of them some time to come around to those kind of products. So I'm not going to try to push what I like on somebody else. It's just like, try to, customize what I offer to them based on what they want, what their tastes are. That's really it. It's not that hard.
It is, though. I think that takes a certain type of personality or a certain goal setting. Like that is something that you say it's not that hard, but I mean, sometimes it comes easy. But when you're trying to cater to other people's needs,
if you're not really good at reading people, then yeah, it might be a little bit hard. I mean, like, I'm somebody who knows how to read people, so I kind of get that. But
kind of like back to the definition of being a steward, like, you're someone who takes responsibility for that management. Like, you have to be someone that they want to listen to. Like, you don't necessarily have to be the most knowledgeable person that trusted source. Thank you, Steve. You have to be someone that they like going to for those questions and those answers.
Being approachable and transparent, and I am like that in every aspect of my life. So, like, with my tastings, like in my professional life, like on my current team, like I'm very, transparent. I'm approachable. Like, everyone knows they can come to me. So yeah.
Coming up with this topic, I was also thinking about like other ways and other areas of our lives outside of whiskey and cigars that we might be considered stewards. And initially, the first thing I thought of was like friendships. Like, you have to be the kind of person, even though you may not be the most, well-off person, the most experienced person in life, but you still have to present yourself as the kind of friend that when one of your friends is having an issue, you're one of those people they go to if they're having a problem.
Yeah, sounds like me to me.
Sounds like you to you.
Yeah, I'm I'm a go-to person for advice and all that good stuff. Like,
do you give good advice based on experience, or do you give good advice and not take good advice?
I give good advice based on experience.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, it's like I don't like I've had a lot of life experience. I'll just give you I'll give you the straight up truth, the way I see it. They don't have to take my advice. I'm not going to push them to take my advice, but I'll just tell them, call it like I see it. That's always been my vibe. So.
Yeah, I think that is part of being again, going back to, are you a good steward, is the fact that it is about the audience. You know, it's not about yourself when you're in that mindset, or if you're in that situation, is that it's not about pushing. Even if you're say you're working for a company, right? Like, again, going back to like the whiskey side or whatever, or you're a cigar rep or whatever, you're going to talk highly about what you are repping, but hopefully you have a bit of a portfolio where you have some options. Hey, this is what we offer. This is what do you like? What do you like? What do you want to try something different? Yeah. And I think sometimes, like you're talking about with friends or people coming to you with life situations, is like, do you want me to listen? Do you want me to give you advice? Do you want me to try to relate to you? That is something that's tough without being absolutely blatant. When you are saying those things, you have someone going through a tough time, whatever it might be, or they have this like promotion in front of them. They have these opportunities in front of them. And it's like they're spewing to you, and like, all I need to know, do you want me to listen? Do you want me to do this? Like, that is something that you can be a good, again, steward with. That is that it's not about you. You're trying to figure out what they want out of this situation. And I think it's something with what you're doing with this certification. You can do it with a job. Sales is everything a lot of times, but it's not a negative. This is something that, what does that person want from this? And if they say they want your opinion, they may not like it, but you gave them that, and that's what they're going to take from it.
And they can do what they want with it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
If they come to you, once again, I think being a good steward is not necessarily, or being a bad steward is more of force feeding that opinion. That
I don't believe in that. No,
I don't either. And that's what I'm saying. Like, that's where I'm talking about with, like, are you a good steward? Whether it be doing what you're doing, Amy, what we're doing with this podcast. One of the things I love about this part 2 on our podcast is the fact that we can do this in a conversational style. It is something that there is no agenda. And one of the things in the part 2 that I love about this, and you won't find this typically on a lot of whiskey podcasts that you'll be invited to after this, but it's the fact that it's conversation. This is there's no agenda. I didn't come to you as a guest, and Nate and I didn't come to you and like, hey, these are the bullet points of what we want to like portray tonight, so that by the end of it, everyone thinks this. That's not what it's about. It's typically,
and if it were like that, I wouldn't agree to be on it. So it's like, I don't believe in forcing any kind of mindset on anybody, like in life or in what they drink. I'm like, everyone has their own preference. It is where it is. So
you said earlier in part 1 where it was about the fact that you're talking about like when we were nosing the Kentucky Owl Wiseman Bourbon.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about like the nose notes, the tasting notes. There's no wrong answer.
There is no wrong answer.
The only wrong answer, and you didn't say this, is that you wait for someone else's answer.
Yeah.
And I would say that's a big part of that. And I think that being a good steward is doing your best to get that person, whoever it is, in a group, individually, but getting that person to really open up to the point that they feel comfortable, so that they get what they want out of that interaction.
I'd agree with that. Yeah.
I think back to like a year and a half ago, Steve, when, and this, mainly between you and me, year and a half ago, when you were going through some life issues.
Bring that up.
I didn't say what it was.
I don't care.
But no, you were going through some difficult life issues, and because you and I are friends and we work together, I was someone that you were coming to not necessarily asking for advice, but you were just kind of like telling me what was on your mind. And at one point, I straight up told you, like, there are times where I had a hard time, being a part of that conversation, even though it was just the two of us, because you and I have lived so vastly different lives and have had different experiences.
Correct.
We believe different things, that I was more concerned about whether or not I was the right kind of person to help you through that. But at the same time, I was more, and I recognized it, I was more just that person for you to talk to. You weren't necessarily wanting me to give you advice on how to get out of the situation or what you could have done differently. You just needed me to be there as a sounding board for you.
Yeah.
And I recognized that. I wasn't trying to tell you to change your life and do, make a bunch of radical changes and do things different. And I wasn't sitting there saying, well, here's where you fucked up. I was just like, no, I'm here for you. If you want to talk, I'm there. If you want advice or something, let me know that. Cause you are 3 years older than me, but you and I are just friends.
Different
I want
lives, to be two different lives that we're in the same situation. That's what I love about this, is that, there you go.
I want to have babies.
But it started.
This does go better with the Monte Cristo white, by the way.
Yeah, the bourbon goes better with the white. Yeah, but
I'm a rye girl, you know that.
But I did. But no, I made it a point to just be there for you. If you wanted to dive deeper into something, I could. But my main thing was just like me being a steward was more about me being a friend that you trusted.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And I will say this, and I think that more recently, and Amy started to talk beyond you, but I think this is really, Jonathan says, I thought Steve was way older than you. Thanks, Jonathan.
Sunday, 2 people came in the shop and, thought Steve and I were brothers.
Yeah, I was apparently a much older brother, like you were an afterthought, but it's one of those things. I think that when you have, that's the difference of doing what I was saying, like Amy, you will get into more of complete strangers in front of you that you have to really dissect and really diagnose of like who is who, and I need to.
It's all about reading the room.
Yeah, you got the body language, and then you have the interactions, you have all that stuff, and I encourage people. And this is a big thing for me on the podcast, is that you really study personality types, because that is going to help you in so many ways. Nate, you and I, going back to that, I'm going to comment real quick on that because we are talking about it because you brought it up, is that when you're going through something, we've known each other long enough, and that's the difference of having that, like, are you being a good steward? Being true to yourself with that is that when we've had conversations about what you're going through, not nearly as life-changing, but they are life-changing, I'm open with you.
Yeah.
And, having you approach me about that, you know what you're going to get.
I do.
So that's one of those things but it's not like.
That's also one of the reasons I go to you.
Yeah. So like when we do that, it's like, if you take the advice, if you don't, whatever it might be, but it is that type of thing, is that on the other side of it, if you need to go to a good steward or someone has your best interest in mind, that you can do that. And if you find those people in your life, you find that, what is it? Board of directors. If you find those people that you may not know that they want to, they have your best interest in mind, but they don't always, they're not an echo chamber. They're not that person that's going to say what you want them to say. And I think that is always something that you have to really filter out of what you're expecting from that interaction. And with you, Amy, doing what you're doing with that, and with your friends, and also on the whiskey side of it, you're not going to make everyone happy.
Yeah, that's true.
I think that's something with the are you a good steward? You can try to cater to
even
everyone.
The best stewards don't make everybody happy. Yeah.
No. Well, go back to the example of a stewardess on a plane or flight attendant.
Yeah.
You're still going to have those customers that are just absolute assholes. But that steward, part of their job is to not react emotionally to that and just default back to their training.
Keep calm, carry on.
There you
That is my vibe. Keep calm, carry on.
But that person's job is, to explain and de-escalate that issue.
Yeah.
Whatever, like
yeah.
on a plane, like, okay, I understand you're pissed because you didn't get the seat you wanted. Here's the policy. Here's why you can't sit there. Like,
you just
and then they
explain to the guests like your kind of your rationale, like, and they don't have to like it, or agree, but like just explain like your thought process, your reasoning. And do what and like come up with a compromise. Do what you can to make them happy.
Yeah,
it's really about making them. It really is a customer experience. It's a CX thing. You really just gotta think about making the customer happy. At the end of the day, it's really what it's about.
I agree completely.
I'm in CX as a career. So
what does that mean?
Customer experience. So
yeah. I am too, but I also know the customer is not always right.
That is true. They're not always right, and there are certain like at least in my company where I work, there are like certain like rules and all that. But in this kind of setting, like a bourbon tasting kind of setting, then they're right.
That's your thing.
Yeah, they're gonna be right to some degree. You just gotta kind of work with them and come up with something that's gonna be happy for them.
Yeah, I've seen plenty of times at the tinderbox where the owner who's been working in the tobacco industry for 40 years, they'll have a customer, and it's one of those customers that likes to pretend like they know more than everybody else, but as soon as they open their mouth, you realize that they don't. But the owner will just sit there and just go along with it because it's not worth, trying to pick a fight and explain how they know better. They're just going to go along with it and, get the customer what they want to the extent that they can. Obviously, in a cigar shop, when you've got like 600 offerings to offer a customer, whether that customer's right or wrong, you can always find something that customer is going to buy and going to enjoy. It may not, what they said may not have been accurate at all. But that person, at least, they come out of it thinking that they won.
Yeah.
Like they got what they wanted out of it.
They want to feel like they got something out of it they can't get anywhere else. At the end of the day, that's really what you want.
Yeah. And then we'll talk about that person behind their back after they walk out the door.
No.
Yes, we do. We all do.
Yeah.
All right. So, closing remarks. We didn't talk about this before, Amy.
Oh.
So at the end of part 2 is closing remarks. So it's mostly based on part 2, which is, are you a good steward, and how you want to leave everyone. Would you like to go first?
What the hell? Just being a good steward is really all about like education but like really tailoring that education to the people that you're with. You're not trying to be a know-it-all. You're not trying to be braggy. You just want to like share, like kind of gauge, like you want to talk to them too. This is like being a part of being a really good bourbon steward is like engaging with the people like that you're catering to and like kind of gaining some kind of insight as to what they want, what they like, and kind of coming together with them to find something that they're going to enjoy. And honestly, that's going to make their best experience, really. Like, yeah.
It's good.
And also, like, at the end of the day, like, also, like, not, like, telling people what to taste or what to smell, because, like, your nose and palate is not going to be the same as the person that you're trying to help's nose and palate. It's different. It's that, and I wish more people really knew that. Like, because like I've been to so many tastings where I'm told like what to smell, what to taste. I'm like, I taste and smell totally different things, and that's okay, because there, like I said earlier, there are no wrong answers at the end of the day. There really aren't. It's objective.
That's one of those reasons why.
And that's one of the things I love the most about whiskey, and like bringing people into whiskey is like telling, hey, there are no wrong answers. There are like, hey, just because I smell something and taste something doesn't mean you have to. Like I'm not going to judge you. Like no one's going to judge you. So, I think once people know that, like that subjective and like no one's gonna judge them. Like the wall kind of comes down, and they're like a lot more comfortable, kind of making their own inferences. So
you make someone comfortable talking about it.
Yes, that's the key. Is just making them comfortable. Yeah,
absolutely. And whiskey helps.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Nate, how about you? Sean, you want to say anything?
No, I'm good.
Cool. I didn't cut him off. He said, no, I'm cool. I feel like they didn't hear you say that. So.
Yeah. No, I like what you said, Amy, about gauging that person, gauging what they want to know. When I'm dealing with a customer in the cigar shop who's a newer cigar smoker, I don't like to use like very specific tasting notes when they're asking me about a cigar, because I know not everyone's going to taste those same flavor notes. Yeah. I may use broad things, broad descriptors, because those should be things that'll be easy for a novice to pick out. But I don't want to be like one of those cigar reviews that has 6 to 12 tasting notes, because sometimes if that person smokes that cigar or tastes that whiskey and they don't taste those exact same notes, they think maybe there's something wrong with them. Maybe they don't have the palate for it. Maybe it's not something that they truly are going to be able to get the full experience of. I just want them to enjoy that product for what that product is. As they develop, they may be able to pick more of that out. And that's, for me, working in the cigar industry as well as doing this podcast, is where I find being a steward comes in the most, because there are people come in, they ask questions about the cigars, working in the cigar shop, and they're coming to you for a recommendation. They want to know what you know. You may, and if you don't know the answer to a question, be honest, because sometimes that goes a long way. Is like,
I'm that way too. Like, I'm very transparent if I don't know the complete answer.
To Jonathan Harris' question,
I'm not a fan of lying. That's just not me.
To Jonathan Harris' question, what are specifics on broad versus narrow tasting notes? Like for me, earthiness, spice, sweetness, like those are kind of broad things.
Of course, like we talked earlier, like these guys gave broad notes. I gave very specific notes when we were tasting this Wiseman. I was like honey and vanilla.
Yeah.
Water, was it
cantaloupe?
Yeah, things like that.
I believe it was cantaloupe.
It's cantaloupe, like honey, vanilla, a little bit of caramel, like charred oak. Yeah.
But like with cigars, I mean, sometimes you get people that vanilla nougat, red meat, cardamom, orange Gatorade. Those are some of the different
All right.
But
those are what I'm saying is those are very
back in.
But at the end of the day, like if you're like leading any kind of tasting or cigar event, read the room. That's really the key. Read the room.
Yeah, and so that's something that I'll do when I'm talking to customers. Like, I will gauge how much knowledge that customer has and try and curtail what I say to them based on that experience. If they're a novice cigar smoker, I'll be very broad. I'll talk about strength. Mm-hmm. If I think it goes well after certain meals, I'll talk about that. If there's someone who's a cigar enthusiast, like, someone who goes into a cigar shop on a daily basis, then I'll go into more detail, because that is what that customer is looking for. And so that's being a steward on that. You have to gauge, as Amy said, use that word is a good word. Gauge that person's experience and what they want to get out of it. Don't try and tell a novice everything you know. All right. So that's the cigar and whiskey side.
And something that I really learned that's really, like, I found a point, like I said, read the room, blah, blah, blah. It's like, at the end of the day, the spirits business, it's a people business. Like,
it is.
So like I said, like I've just done the University of Louisville Distilled Spirits course through the business school. And the most important thing that I took away from that Bob Houseline taught me was it's a people business. It's all about reading people, building relationships, kind of gauging the other person and giving them the experience that they want based on what you gauge.
But I think last part of my closing remarks before we go to Steve.
Get after it. I think you went over on Jonathan's.
It wasn't my fault. But I think that is how we can take our experience in some of the, like in the whiskey or cigar industry, and apply them to our personal lives. Is we have to be the kind of person that our friends want to go to if they are dealing with something.
Yeah.
If they are going through some sort of, life experience, they're coming to us not necessarily because we know everything, because Lord knows Steve and I don't know everything, but we can talk you through it.
Bring me to that.
It's more about, but what you're doing, you are qualifying yourself to be a steward for that person, because that person is coming to you with a problem. They may not necessarily be asking you to solve the problem, but they're asking you to be a friend.
Yeah.
Sometimes being a steward is just being a friend, because you're that person.
So fun.
You're someone they want to come to.
It's so fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You're
the friend that knows shit. That's what. Sometimes that's what you are at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You're the friend that knows their shit. Like I have friends. Like I'm a steward. Like I have people coming to me every day. Like, Amy, have you had this? What do you think? Blah blah. Should I try?
Does it get annoying?
This? No, I love it.
Okay.
Even my boss, every once in a while, he'll like message me or text me. It's like, hey, Amy, I tried these over the weekend. Have you had any of these? What do you think? I love that. So
yeah.
It's so fun to tell them like what I think. It's like, oh, I've had that. I like that a lot.
I think that's a big part of it.
So yeah,
you have like,
I am somebody that people who like whiskey, like they know that I'm somebody that they can come to, like without judgment. So yeah,
everyone can see through everyone else, right? So what I like about what we're talking about, are you being a good steward? Nate, you actually dialed in a little bit about the fact that, when I was going through some shit a couple years ago, I had a friend in Nate that, he hadn't gone through it. And so he was a sounding board, and we qualified that. So there's two people that are probably good stewards in other arenas and not always prepared for the other arena, right? So you're not always prepared for what someone comes to you as someone that they trust. And I think being a good steward is about trust. It's funny, and Jonathan's timing all this stuff. That's fine. But as we're doing our closing remarks, I'm here. And I had a customer of mine text me. He may be listening, maybe not. He's been this really just genuine person. And he is someone that is just excited about life and just excited about everything. And he's moved around. He's worked everywhere. But he's dialed into the Tinderbox Easton, one of our sponsors, and where we work. And he just texted me for this order. So while you guys are talking, I'm listening out of my left ear, and I feel guilty, but I try to multitask, because that's where we're at. And I'm texting him back, hey man, I sent him a YouTube link of what we're doing right now. He's like, damn, dude, like, yeah. I was like, yeah, I'm working all the time like you are. Like, this is what we do. This, like, we're trying to build the community, and he's all about that. And it's really fun, the fact that when I said, hey, if you want to tune in this week or next, and he said, I will, and I am. I don't know what he's doing right now. If he's tuned in right now, it's great. It's one of those things that if you're a good steward, it's about trust. It's about building trust,
building the rapport.
Mm-hmm. It's a trust thing. It's not about being sold. That's the greatest part about it, is that it's the greatest part about it. It's also the toughest part, is that you being a friend, you being someone that is an expert in something, if you're tied into a company, that you aren't just saying things that I want to hear. As soon as you break that barrier of the fact that it's like, you want to smoke cigars, cool. You want to drink whiskey, cool. What do you like? Let me enhance this. Let me help you do this better. That's anything. It's not about cigars or whiskey. It's about everything that you do when someone comes to you for business, personal, or relationship advice, anything. There's no right answer. That's the same thing we go back to with the tasting thing. There's no right answer, but it's about developing trust and this genuine sense of feeling that they can open up to you. That's as a good steward.
Yeah.
That's
the best. It's the best feeling.
That's the end all.
It's really what you want above all else. Yeah.
And you want it because you feel good. You want it because they are satisfied.
They're happy.
And they're happy.
And they're leaving happy. And it just makes you feel good about yourself. And that if they leave happy, you've done a job well done.
And I got to tell you guys that this is not easy.
This is something
that you really need to dial in and hope that you win by the percentages that the person that we go back to doing these tastings that you're doing, Amy.
Mm-hmm.
It's, can you get that person that is there just for the tour? Can you get that person that thinks they know better than you? Can you get that person that is the dominant person in every other aspect in their life and they don't know shit about what you're talking about? Can you get everyone, as you learn these people, to enjoy what they're asking of you? It's not a challenge. It's just the fact that everyone they're there for a reason. And when you're there for a reason, this is when you get to that point that you're a good steward because you listened, you catered.
And I know how to read the room.
And you adapted.
I've known how to read the room since I was like 9 years old. So yeah.
Then you're good.
So when you move around as much as I did when I was a kid, you learn how to read the room. So.
Well, I think that being a good steward is as we're doing this podcast tonight is hoping that everyone got something from this.
Mm-hmm.
And if you did, share, like, all that stuff on the podcast. But to everyone out there, happy Whiskey Wednesday.
Happy Whiskey Wednesday, everybody.
601
Happy 601 day. Woo!
Cheers to Erica.
Happy summer. Woo!
Cheers.